Where's Keith? Well, good evening, councillors. Before we start the meeting, can I ask Keith Osman-Smith to say a prayer for guidance for us, please? Thanks, Keith.
So shall we be still? Almighty God, as we gather tonight, we are thankful once again for all those members of our community of the borough of Telford and Wrekin who have come together tonight as councillors. We know the heavy toll that public service takes on work and on family life. And so we are doubly grateful for these men and women who give so much of their time, their skills and their experience as they sacrificially strive to work for the benefits of those who live and work in the borough. We thank you for the system of local government which allows every member of the community to have a voice through their local councillors as they represent the wards of the borough. And we commend to you those 33 wards: Apley Castle, Alston, Brookside, Church Aston, Lillishall, College, Cookham Oak, Dawley Magna, Donington, Dothill, Edgemond, Arkle, Arkle Magna, Hadley and Legomery, Haygate, Horsehay and Lightmoor, The Gorge, Ketley and Oakengates, Lawley and Overdale, Madeley, Mallinsley, Muxton, Newport East, Newport North, Newport South, Newport West, Park, Priorslee, Shawbirch, St George's, The Nedge, Woodside, Rockadine and Rockadine Wood and Trench. And we ask that you bless each of these discrete areas of our borough and all who live and work in them with peace, prosperity and security. And as we pray for tonight's meeting of the Borough Council, we thank you for the work of so many people that's gone into the preparation for this meeting, for all the working parties and committees, for those who have contributed to the agenda. We know that we do not all share the same ideologies and party identities, and that our differences of necessity place us in different camps. But we do ask that whatever these differences, where there can be unity of purpose and spirit, that this is recognised. We ask that everyone might give and receive the respect that each one is due, and that we might be considerate of each other in our aspirations of serving the borough with all our might. We pray again for the health and well-being of the Mayor and Mayoress, the Speaker, the Leader of the Council, the Cabinet, and for all our councillors. And we thank you for continuing signs of improvement in our town and for partnerships and cooperation between so many agencies working together for the public good. And then we ask for your blessings on all those who are involved in striving to bring relief to those caught in the trap of food poverty, those who are suffering financial hardship. We pray also at this time for our children and young people in this town. Lord, we thank you for all those who spend their lives trying to make ours better, for those in public service, for all the good Samaritans, for those who give themselves to charitable works of service for the good of others. Our God, we place into your hands the safekeeping of this meeting, that all here, those of all faiths and those of none, so that their resolutions passed tonight might be the right ones, and that all might know the satisfaction of effective service and the peace this brings. And we ask that in all that is done this night and at all other times and in other places, you will continue to grant wisdom, courage and compassion. These things we ask in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Now it's said to members, welcome, and the meeting will begins now. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I remind members that filming and photography recording is permitted by members of the public, but can I ask the members of the public if they are going to be recording and photography and filming, don't do it obtrusively. They're a delicate lot down here. Right. Can I also ask the members to remember what we passed 2 meetings ago now about respecting each other? I shouldn't have to remind you, but I've been asked to say that. Well, yes, okay, Councillor Bentley, we'll. I know where you are now. That's what. Right. We'll then move on. Then item 1, the minutes of the council. Are there of the last meeting on the 21st of January? Are they a true and correct record? Is that agreed? I'll ask the mayor to sign them.
Sorry. No, we're doing it next.
Item 2 is the apologies for absence.
Yeah, we've received apologies from Councillor Eric Carter and Jane Greenaway, and Councillor Conor Furnivall has been delayed. He will be joining us as soon as he can.
Okay. Any other apologies? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3 then, declarations of interest. Is there any declarations of interest?
No declarations yet, Speaker, unless there's any from the floor.
Any from the floor? No interest on the floor. Right. Item 4, the leaders' report and announcements. Councillor Sahota. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last few weeks has been dominated by our budget consultation and listening to the people, planning how to save further £30 million as a result of further government cuts to our grant. During January and early February, we hosted a number of events around the borough to listen to the people and had over 4,000 responses. Many thanks to all those who took part in it. We have also looked very carefully at what people told us and at how and where possible we can adapt our proposal to take account of these views. For example, we are keeping Newport's First Point and library service open, subject to the review of operational arrangements. We'll also be talking with partners, community organisations, towns and parishes to see if from April 2017 they can take on a number of services which we can no longer afford to run. This approach is already yielding results. Libraries in Dawley, Headley, Madeley and Sturchley are all set to remain in their community, albeit delivered differently. We are also making significant progress in other areas through this partnership approach. We are confident of finding ways to keep the 4 police community support officers posts in the borough that we currently fund after April 2017. We also ask residents by how much they would be willing for the council tax to rise by, and we will propose later on this evening to raise the council tax by 3.2% next year. This includes 2% increase to support adult social care that the government has already assumed that will take place. More than 60% of the respondents to our consultation prefer to increase council tax by at least 3.2%, with most of the money ring-fenced for adult social care and services for vulnerable children. After this increase, our council tax rise is still expected to be one of the lowest in the Midlands. Mr. Speaker, working with our local communities and listening to them are Labour values with social justice at the heart of it. This administration and this Labour group deeply believes in these values, and we work collectively to this end, not individually, but united. And what we have achieved in the last 5 years, and indeed in the last few weeks, is by collective effort of all Labour members, not just by one. We continue with our drive to make our borough a place that attracts business and visitors, whether this is through events or other initiatives. This week, we have become the first council in the country to secure a land with the HCA and DCLG. This also involves the Marshes LAP, and we believe we can attract around £45 million investment into our borough over the next 10 years. Telford land deal can create up to 8,500 new jobs and see 2,800 new homes built, which are part of 15,500 new homes already identified as a part of the local plan. This is another ringing endorsement of the government's view of Telford as a place with great prospect, another success of this Labour administration. Another key part of this is promoting the borough to the business and tourism and to the big employers as well. We will be at the major shows in the next few days selling Telford to events, business, tourism industry, and in a new and exciting ways. We are also hosting a range of events in the borough to attract visitors to our town. This starts on Saturday, the 2nd of April, spring in the park, with a great family event with social guests such as Thomas the Tank Engine. I look forward to seeing thousands of families there. In 2 weeks' time, our Job Box team are joining forces with Army to celebrate National Apprenticeship Week. They are hosting the apprenticeship show at the International Centre, an opportunity for school people and job seekers to meet employers and find out about the apprenticeship. So, Mr. Speaker, despite the hard time and the cuts, this Labour administration continue to do its best for the borough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colin. Item 5 is the Mayor's announcements.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As usual, I'm not here to go through every items and things I've been to in the last couple of weeks, because you've got it in your agenda. Safe to say thanks to everyone who have supported me when I go out there. And I've been to some interesting things, especially opening the new schools and meeting with a lot of the youngsters throughout the borough. Those are the citizens of the future of this borough. And it's great to meet them out there in their schools and things, and they want to know, what does the mayor do? And so that's quite interesting. And I just want to thank all the members and supporters of my tree charity. My tree charity this year is MS, Samaritan and Wellington Cottage Care. And a lot of people out there are doing things on behalf of the mayor to get money for them, and we are doing quite well. We now, I think, just over £6,000, and the rest of the event coming up, I'm told, will raise, and if we can get £12,000 by the end of May, then these three charity will benefit from it, and the people of Telford that support will benefit for it. So thank you very much for that. And with that, I will say again, thank you all for supporting me.
Thank you, Leon. Well done. Item 6 is public questions, but no public questions have been submitted. Item 7 is Cabinet decisions made since the last meeting of the Council, and this is Appendix C on the White Papers, pages 14 to 17. Does the Leader have any comments to make on it, or Cabinet members? Right. Any questions? Yes, Joanne.
Can you hear me? Is it on? Yes.
Don't do that.
For the record, Councillor Joy Francis.
I have some, well, Pride in Your High Street. That's a good project, but I am a little concerned that one company called Good to Great has won the contract to do 7 projects across the borough. And for this, we will be paying them £229,000, which is just a smidgen short of £250,000. I think that would buy quite a few personal care packages. So my question is, who is responsible for checking the credibility of this company? Because a quick look on Companies House website shows a deficit of just over 26,000 on their balance sheet for the years 2014-15. So I really hope someone has looked into that company. I don't want this to... Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. Councillor Davies to reply.
First of all, can I just welcome Councillor Francis's support for the general principle of Pride in Your High Street. It was something that received cross-party support when we launched the scheme just over 12 months ago. Unfortunately, that then lost the cross-party support when we announced the areas that were going to be improved. In terms of the process around all applications that have been successful, they've gone through, as you would expect, a thorough due diligence process, which has first of all been led by officers of the council through the legal, audit and finance team, amongst others. It then has gone through an independent evaluation, an independent panel evaluation, and the Good to Great is one of many projects that have been successful. The figure that you mentioned is the maximum figure that can be awarded under the cabinet paper. That doesn't necessarily follow on that's the amount of money that Good to Great would be receiving. The cabinet report simply allowed those successful applicants to go through to the next phase. The next phase is due diligence and detailed conversations with officers to determine what they have to offer for the communities involved. I know that that particular company are meeting the parish and town council clerks in the coming days to discuss where they are in regards to their application. Of course, one of the main responsibilities of the council and cabinet members, and indeed all officers, is to ensure that public money is spent wisely. And I can give that assurance that I believe it's gone through those checks and balances that you'd expect. I think what's really important, though, is that the investment into our high streets is absolutely key. And I see you're agreeing. I think that if you look at the programmes of works in Iron Bridge, in Dawley, in Madeley, in Hadley, elsewhere, it's really, really good. Unfortunately, I'm surprised that your party leadership has now said that we shouldn't be doing Pride in Your High Street in Iron Bridge, in Hadley, in Dawley, in Madeley, in Donington and other areas, and Wellington as well. If you want to have a separate conversation, Councillor Francis, I'm more than happy to talk to you.
Councillor Hoskin.
To the chairman of the cabinet or cabinet member with regard to Pride in the High Street.
Councillor Hoskin, could you get to a microphone, please? Because members of the public can't hear what you're saying. Get to the microphone, please.
Right, David. Mr. Speaker, through you to the councillor in charge of Pride Fund, Pride in the High Street. Can I ask a question? Can I ask why Telford and Wrekin employ quality staff that look after the Pride Fund to the councillors, which amounts to £108,000 thereon, and we then have to go outside to find a committee and people that we don't know about, that councillors in here don't know about, the councillors in here have no idea whatsoever of the individuals that are sitting on that particular group. Why? When we've got adequate, sensible, qualified staff in-house to carry this out. I just cannot understand it. It's quite unbelievable to me. And while I'm on the floor, if I may, Mr. Speaker, using respect to you, it seems to me rather, in my opinion, dubious when you think that 5 categories, applications that were accepted by good to great, all come to exactly the same penny. Now, I go into bookies' shops, I'm ever so sorry, and the odds against that happening of 5 applications out of the number that has been awarded to have exactly the same funding is millions and millions to 1. It's quite unbelievable to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hoskin. Can you answer both questions, please, Councillor Davies?
Unfortunately, I think, first of all, the £108,000 that the council refers to is the council pride fund that is allocated to councillors, which is a separate to this particular report. So I presume that what the council is talking about is the £1 million High Street Fund. I'll address my remarks to that. As I said in my previous answer to your colleague, this went through a due diligence process with senior council officers from right across the council, including the legal department, the audit, the finance, all those kind of departments that you'd expect them to go through. Only at that point did it go to the independent panel. The cabinet report that was agreed to some 18 months ago, which at the time, from memory, this Labour administration was criticised for not putting more money into the High Street Fund. I think in the alternative budget 1 year ago today, we were being told to put £2 million into that High Street Fund, not £1 million into that High Street Fund to invest in the way that we have done. The independent panels then come to a judgment. As I say, in terms of good to great, I'm more than happy to meet interested councillors to talk about what the product is. Each area was able to bid up to a maximum of £100,000 for that part of the funding. The numerous applications came in, and good to great have been able to demonstrate a need around key areas. Now, what I'm afraid that the Councillor Hoskin didn't talk about was welcoming the £50,000 ring fence money that we've ring fenced to Wellington Town Council to work with in order to regenerate the town, which I know from conversations in the past that he cares about a great deal.
Yeah. Councillor Bentley, then Councillor Nelson.
Will I need that?
Yes, you will.
Bring the guys.
It's interesting when we're making or discussing cuts and various things and the continual blame, but let's be face facts, shall we? Whatever the administration here, we'd have all been subject to the same government constraints that we've got now. And when we talk about pride in the community and the high streets, is it right that we spend or grant £100,000 to a parish council to bring back into use a public house that we purchased under a compulsory purchase order to reflect the build of the new Phoenix School?
It was a point that was made by your colleague, Councillor Dugmore, deputising for your leader of the group at the Cabinet. And I think, Councillor, that you would be right in your assertion if you had all the facts in front of you. The reality is that the money that Telford Council spent when the so-called regeneration had already happened under your previous administration was for the Lord Hill building, together with a large amount of land. Now, that large amount of land has been sold in part to Wrekin Housing Trust for the use of social housing and bungalows. Another large section of that land has been designated for parking. So the money that is being used in regards to the Lord Hill is simply for the building. That building has been left derelict and empty, and I've right on the High Street in Dublin for 7 years. It's a constant reminder of the plight that the previous Green administration left undoorly, quite frankly.
No, Councillor Nelson.
Mr. Speaker. The question about the state of our roads. I am delighted to say that these Newport residents.
Councillor Nelson, can I ask which part of Appendix C you're talking to?
Pride Fund.
Okay. Pride Fund, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Carry on.
My time. I'm delighted that Newport residents are having some of their hard-earned council tax returned to them through the Pride funds. 120,000 it will be spent wisely and make Newport's High Street even better. It's already very attractive. I recommend a visit. I've not been a huge fan of the Pride Fund initiatives, Mr. Speaker. I'm not convinced that it's not a distraction from the fundamentals of doing simple things properly. I'll tell members why. But first, if you'll forgive me, Mr. Speaker, very briefly, I was very pleased to see Councillors Bowman and Davies holding up a large piece of cardboard in the soon-to-be-missed Your Voice publication to the photograph. Readers were led to understand that the oblong of cardboard in their grasp was a Pride Fund check. Under this administration, they dropped it, it would have bounced. Anyway, members may recall the photo in the glorious Ironbridge Gorge, lads standing on the edge of the abyss, poised. Can you picture the scene? The cameraman, their faces to the lens, the cameraman was searching side, searching, still searching. Photographer was eager for that perfect shot, calling out, back a bit, lads, just back a bit more. They survived. I was so... More seriously, while 122,000 return to Newport is welcome, there is an aspect of this administration's care and attention to Newport's High Street that falls very short, the condition of the street itself. Mr. Speaker, not everyone knows this, but I'm a country boy, but I was a country vet, so I'm familiar with walking across ploughed fields. I'm even familiar, more than I should be no doubt, with driving across ploughed fields. We cannot depend on such familiarity and confidence with the majority of Newport's visitors, though, and they do come by car. Is it the administration's intention to create a rural theme park at Newport's High Street?
Councillor Nelson,
when are you going to fix the roads, please? It's like driving on a ploughed field. It's not that we're investing 120,000 in embellishing Newport's High Street. We're just driving with your eyeballs. Thank you.
I actually think, Mr. Councillor Nelson, that you were abusing what we were saying about this. It is only, I remind people, it's on Appendix C, the items which are there, and you were talking about road repairs. I have to say, I was in Newport myself this morning, driving my car along your high street, and I didn't see any potholes or any mud on the roads, anything like that. Does anybody want to say anything about that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. First of all, I think you must have sounded better at home, Councillor Nelson, than in the chamber, but that's just my opinion. First of all, I've spent a lot of time in Newport recently as well. It's a brilliant part of our borough. And I'm glad that the investment of the £422,000 into Newport that you spoke about complements the investment in the Newport hub that the Pride in the Community last time invested in, the refurbished leisure centre that's been upgraded just recently in Newport. Newport is a brilliant part of our borough, and we won't talk it down. I've got to say though, Councillor Anderson, that on the morning that we announced this Pride funding, your leader of your group was on the radio saying that they would scrap the fund, they wouldn't do anything. The Toll House scheme in Newport that's been successful together, all with other unsuccessful schemes in Newport through Pride, just simply would not happen if the leader of your group was the leader of this council. In regards to roads, I hope that you report the potholes by your Telford everyday Telford Act, and we'll deal with those in due course. But the reality is, this council has got £107 million less money. If you have a word with the Chancellor and the Secretary of State for Local Government to give us some more money so we can upgrade roads, we'd be more than happy and welcome to spend some of that money in Newport.
Councillor Football, can you address your questions to Appendix C?
I will indeed, Chair. This is another couple of questions about this Pride in your High Street. Bearing in mind that the parade in Donington was eligible to apply, whereas Trench, which has more shops, could not, can the Cabinet member explain why some high streets were excluded from the scheme? And secondly, I would like to know, in these difficult financial times, does the Cabinet member agree with the Conservative and indeed the leader of the Liberal Democrat and Independent group, who stated at Cabinet last week that these projects, though worthy in themselves, are not a priority when, for example, social care funding is being cut?
Well, there you have it, Mr. Speaker. So the £122,000 for the new projects would be scrapped under the Tory administration. The £100,000 for the gorge would be scrapped under the Conservative administration. The money for Madeley, the money for the money for Donington, and so on and so forth, and St George, and all the other areas would not happen if the Conservatives took over the council. Well, let's be very clear about this, Mr. Speaker. Our high streets, our district centres require investment. They are places where people tell us time and time again through the consultations that we do that we should be investing in them. And I would like to spend money in each of our district centres, in each of our high streets, in each of our communities, and if the government gave some of our £110 million back, we'll be absolutely delighted to spend the money. So there you have it. The deputy, I think the deputy leader of the group, Councillor Dugmore, I don't know if you still are, but there you are. On public record, the money for Iron Bridge, the money for Madeley, the money for Dawley, the members behind you would definitely be scrapped under the Conservative administration.
I think you've given an answer. I think we've got a debate. Anyway, Councillor Reid, do you want to come in?
Criteria.
Can we have one meeting, please?
Right, thank you, Speaker. Seem to be mentioned in dispatches along the way. There's a couple of things here I would like to comment on, Pride. I've got a couple of questions around that. But I've also got just some thoughts on investment. Would I give £250 million to an organisation that does workshops, shopfront displays and mystery shoppers? £250,000 when adult social care and children's social care is under the pressure? Well, the answer is probably not. But there are more effective ways, of course, of investing in our district centres, and we, of all administrations, had a far better record of doing that, and we applied it right across the board. We weren't selective, as we've seen with this administration, and there's just a few there, centres that have received some money. What about all the others, as my colleague here raised the left hand? What I would like to ask also about Pride is I noticed that it's still the case, there's about £170,000 that was unallocated that people didn't want. And yet at the time I was hearing that Pride, of course, was extremely successful. I understand, if my memory serves me right, that was going to be rolled over into next year's programme, but people don't want it now. Let us at least put the £170,000 to some of the pressing needs that we have at this council at the moment. As for other issues that are covered with Pride, they can be covered as usual, as normal, through other budgets. A lot of this has been badged up, as we know, to be something it's certainly not. But I think when we're coming to a point where finances are under pressure, give away some of these sums, and I will also question that money in Dawley as well. 100k to that, plus the capital value to this council, it's an immense amount of money. And as for Dawley, yeah, we treated Dawley pretty well. We spent a lot of money in Dawley. We did. Well, you can't. I suppose casting your mind back is difficult because nothing had been received in Dawley for many, many years. We did the car parks, the high street. We also, if I remember correctly, you were going to refurbish the school, the Webb School in Dawley. We changed that and we put a brand new school in there. So just think back to what it was like and what has actually been achieved.
Councillor, somebody's moved a point of order.
Point of order. This isn't about the Cabinet report in Pride in the High Street. It's not a debate about schools, which isn't in the Cabinet decisions. I think you've shown a great load of latitude tonight, Mr. Speaker, but we really are moving away from my belief is members opposite are trying to get round their 3-minute restriction on the council budget.
I don't accept that point of order, Councillor Sloan.
I'll move next business.
I don't accept that point of order, nor move next business, because next business is a peculiar one to move on to. Councillor E did keep coming back to the Pride in Your Community Fund, and he was using the fund in general. And I was about to finish off with Councillor Eade and say, if Councillor Davis wishes to make any comments on what has been said, then we'll wind up the debate on Pride in Your High Streets, and see if there's any further questions on item C. If not, we'll move on to the next business.
Just very briefly, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I'll take no lessons as a good Dawley boy about what the previous administration did in Dawley, because I can tell you one thing, Mr. Speaker. They caused more problems than they solved in Dawley, the problems that we're mopping up right now. I'll also take no lessons from the Leader of the Opposition, talk about the Labour's Building Schools for the Future programme, a Labour government programme that the Conservative government cut when they came into power, and that resulted in reductions in the money for this area. And I won't take any lessons from the Leader of the Opposition in talking about compassion. The party of Ian Duncan Smith, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the Pride in the High Street Fund, people have heard loud and clear, that they do not want the money going to Iron Bridge, to Dawley, to Madeley, and people will be reminded of that in 2019, Mr. Speaker.
Let's take it off. Okay, we move on. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I know, yeah.
I actually have a question on the Telford land deal, but we have an item on the agenda. Can I ask a question?
No, I would prefer...
I was just clarification. Thank you very much indeed.
I will see you during that debate. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I spoke at the last... it's Annex C, Section 2.2.1, Financial Management, 2015-2016. Councillor Lee Carter I spoke to last time about this. The financial reports, again, the financial management reports are in my hand. Last time I mentioned the council tax being at 74 and being up, both of them up. And I asked a question about the sales ledger, the outstanding debt. I've still got that question. I've looked at the February papers, the actual council tax, and the other one is below budget at the moment. But I'll go back to the question again on the sales ledger, the outstanding debt. This time it says 6.18 and a target of 7, and we're still 0.90% ahead of target. It's not correct. Can I have a question, please, from Councillor Lee Carter?
Councillor Carter.
Yeah, Councillor Wright, thank you for that question. I can confirm that the report is correct. The figure that you're questioning relates to the amount of aged outstanding sales ledger. That's 7%. Any figure below that means that we're managing those finances, we're managing that sales ledger correctly. Any figure above that shows that we aren't. The figure on the last several financial reports has been below that, showing that we're actually actively managing that sales ledger correctly.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Wright?
Yes, please, Speaker. The paperwork for the 25th of February, the financial management report, is actually incorrect. It says 6.18, the target 7%. It should actually read better than you said, 0.82 ahead of the target, not 0.9% ahead of target. So your figure is actually wrong on the report.
Speaker, I think it's best that I confirm this with, we have actually got confirmation from the Chief Financial Officer on this point, and I'll send that to Councillor Wright. I'll do it actually within 7 days by the end of play tomorrow, actually.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. One final question for Councillor Bentley. As long as it's not Pride in Your High Street, I'll allow it. Sorry? As long as it's not Pride in Your High Street, I'll allow it.
I probably could bring it into it, but
no, you can't.
All right. I want to actually raise the acknowledgement of the Cabinet decision of last Thursday to move forward to referendum the Waters Upton Neighbourhood Plan. It's the second of 3 within the Vanguard pilot, which I endorsed as a Cabinet member, and it was obviously, as a rural parish council, small rural parish council, didn't have the benefits of the large Madeley Town parish town council in the ability to use the services of a dedicated officer. So I want to congratulate all those that took part in bringing that plan together. Waters Upton Parish Council, Roy and Sue Wall, the project managers, and I would like to know from the council member, cabinet member responsible, whether he would encourage other rural parish councils to indeed write their own neighbourhood plans.
Councillor Overton.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bentley. As a move report last week, it's really good that Waters Upton have moved forward on this neighbourhood plan, and you've got a very good clerk, as you know very well.
Excuse me.
I would say that any council, any parish and town council in the borough should, if they wish, move to a neighbourhood plan. I think it's a very good process. Mainly been through it, and now Waters Upton. So that's my reply.
Yeah. He did say he got a very good clerk.
There was an innuendo in there.
I don't think there was, Councillor Bentley.
Well,
Councillor Dugmore, as long as anything, something new on the paper, if you can.
That was about playing pitch strategy.
Is that on the agenda? On the
Yeah.
223.
Yeah, 223.
Yeah,
Telford and Wrekin playing pitch strategy.
Just checking.
Does the cabinet member agree that the current state and number of Telford and Wrekin playing pitches is woefully inadequate? And how does she propose to reverse this downward trend?
Are we there? Yeah. Can I actually welcome the question on the playing field strategy? I actually was going to refer councillors to it, but I was sure that there was somebody out there that would have read it other than this side of the house. If you actually read the detail of the report, there are pitches that are inadequate, but if they're our own, then we can do something about them, providing the good weather, etc. Many of our pitches are inadequate because of overuse. There is no question about that. And in some respects, you can say it's good that they're overused, because it means that more people are getting active, which is what we want. Now, I have, I suppose you can say privileged, if you like, a document that makes it easy for me to read, that you've got the RAG ratings or whatever. The other thing is that this is a basis that is based on Sport England, that if you've got a club that's independent, that this is a real document that can be used to actually apply for grants. I like other people's money, and it's more and more key that everything that's out there uses other people's money, whether it's Sport England, whether it's Viola, whether it's CETA, or indeed some of the other smaller things that you can apply for. But yeah, I'm not denying that some are inadequate, but it is far from the truth of the headline that was in the Shropshire Star, that you can look through and the red far, far way is below the blue. And can I draw the attention of councillors, which I found difficult to understand to start with, what a secured pitch and an unsecured pitch is. It's got nothing to do with fences. If it's secured, then it's got public access. If it's unsecured, which is probably the likes of Harper Adams School, Wrekin College, but yeah, nothing's perfect. And if we're going to depend more and more, and we are today, that a lot of the clubs rely on volunteers to cut their pitches. They don't pay somebody, they rely on volunteers. Where we can help, we do. We are currently again looking at our pitches that are, let's say, woefully inadequate, but still playable. But I can assure you, from some of the weather that we've had, it's going to take a long time for some of them to recover.
One final question. Councillor Bentley. I do mean final on this one.
Sorry?
This is the what? This is the ultimate question. Go on.
The ultimate?
Yeah, not the penultimate.
So I'm last?
You're last.
Well, that's nice. On this playing pitch strategy, whilst I welcome the fact that we have now got a strategy, because we've woefully missed one for many, many years, it doesn't identify really and truthfully in there where the provision is really lacking, whether it's in junior pitches, senior pitches. It talks about cricket pitches, it talks about rugby pitches, it talks about hockey pitches. However, hockey is generally played on artificial surfaces these days. The 3G services will not take up the incapacity for senior pitches that we've now got in the borough, because land has been sold off for development. Cricket pitches are identified, and there is talk in the report about those, but mostly they're done by private clubs, so they shouldn't be included, in my view, in that report. They are well maintained. The preparation of a cricket pitch can't be done by amateurs. In the same way, you can't replace a cricket pitch with an artificial pitch in there to use it. You'll never get a spinning wicket on an artificial surface. So therefore, I think this strategy needs to go a lot further. We need to identify, and we need to take out of it, because it's either in that report or it was said, the potential of actually asking various clubs if they want to take ownership of the grounds, because that further reduces the capacity. So would the Cabinet member agree we need to look at, have this strategy further examined?
Do you want to reply, Liz Clare? But before you do, can I just say to Councillor Bentley, there are artificial cricket pitches around the world. 50 years ago, I played on one or two of them in the Midlands.
A good spin bowler?
It was a cricket pitch. You play cricket. Get your facts right. Councillor Clare.
Can I say that every report that is brought forward, the Tories would like you to go away and do it again? Well, excuse me, one, the resources aren't there, and this is more than comprehensive. It would be a big omission if you did not include pitches that belonged to clubs or whatever. And can I assure Councillor Bentley that there are some absolutely wonderful volunteers that actually keep cricket pitches and football pitches to the best standards. And outside this meeting, I will show him the report and tell him who in fact keeps one cricket club going.
Mr. Speaker, I am not denying that fact.
Councillor Bentley, you've made your comments on the reports, and questions. He says you can make comments and ask questions on it of the Cabinet members. I think
Mr. Speaker, can I just say that Councillor Bentley stated that amateurs could not keep pitches up to a standard, and I would refute that. Okay.
So I think we've had a fair crack of the whip to the Cabinet. I've not made friends with some people, I know. But we're now going to move on to Appendix D, which is the landed deal, which is item 8. And Councillor Sean Davis is to move it.
First of all, Mr. Speaker, please can I just pay tribute to Councillor Eric Carter, who had a huge role to play in the Telford land deal negotiations, and indeed to yourself, Mr. Speaker, when you were the Cabinet member concerned. This hasn't been a quick fix. This has been many years in the coming, and I'm really delighted that we're now announcing it to the Council. Mr. Speaker, through Telford and Wrekin Council's business-winning, business-supporting approach, we've successfully put the Telford and the borough on the investment map, delivering new jobs for local people and revenue for the borough. We launched Enterprise Telford in October, and we've seen a massive growth in investment inquiries and existing business expansions. Enterprise Telford offer is backed by a £20 million growth fund, and since we announced that growth fund, Mr. Speaker, we have had a large amount of investment inquiries. We are due to announce the first such one at the end of this month. And since the launch of the fund, we have seen inquiries to our investment team to specifically 7 companies. Those 7 companies are talking about 1 million square foot of industrial and commercial space, some ranging from 5 acres of space up to 25 acres of space. Job creation on those deals alone, Mr. Speaker, are in the region of 2,000 jobs, and one company alone would bring 1,100 new jobs to Telford and Wrekin. And let me just say, Mr. Speaker, I know we'll come on to it later on, but the alternative budget scraps that £20 million growth fund. Let it be known that this Labour administration is a pro-business Labour administration, because we want our residents to be in high-paid, well-trained jobs. Mr. Speaker, this is a partnership between the local enterprise partnership, the Marshes LEP, ourselves and government, and we are now in a situation where we have a shadow land deal board, and we will be formatting the new substantial board in due course. Mr. Speaker, I think that what we need to know about this deal is quite simple. Before, when land belonging to HCA was sold, that money would go off to Treasury, and Treasury would do what they wanted with it. Now what we've got as part of this deal is Telford land for Telford jobs, for Telford growth. And I think that's critically important, Mr. Speaker, that we are the income from the land of Telford that belongs in our borough will be retained in our borough. Of course, Mr. Speaker, any deal is a partnership and a deal between interested parties. Telford and Wrekin Council will be driving forward the development of this land. As the leader has already outlined, over 8,500 jobs, over 2,000 new homes, all part of the local plan, which of course is making its way through that particular process. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about around £44.5 million of investment here. We are absolutely committed, and we are absolutely sure that by marketing and investing in this land, Telford and Wrekin Council would receive over the 10 years £19 million from this land deal, a joint venture between this government and this council. In addition, Mr. Speaker, we will have around £6 million on top of that of business rates and council tax that once the development has been completed. This is a borough-wide deal, Mr. Speaker, not just about Telford. The deal will see £1 million invested into infrastructure in Newport, an immediate incentive to investors supporting our Newport business proposition launched last month when I was in Newport. This deal is the equivalent size of a city deal, and yes, it is about risk and reward. But, Mr. Speaker, Telford and Wrekin is fighting above its weight, above its size, and I think that many councils right across the country are looking and taking note of what Telford are doing. But finally, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say thank you to those who have been involved in making this deal happen, from yourself, Councillor Carter, David Wright, the former MP for Telford, and others, and of course the local enterprise partnership, ably chaired by Graham Wynne, who has also made this a reality. Mr. Speaker, Telford is open for business. We're a business-winning, business-supporting council. We're an enterprise town to rival enterprise zones. This is good news for business who are in Telford, want to come to Telford, want to grow in Telford, and more importantly, some may argue, Mr. Speaker, this creates jobs for Telford residents from Telford land, and I think that's hopefully this will continue to have the cross-party support that it has had since its inception.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Lee Carter, the second.
Second, I reserve my right to speak if I could.
Councillor Fletcher, do you want to come in at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple of questions, as I said. As Councillor Davis said, it's going to cost us £43 million to proceed with this deal. But it says the gross capital receipts will be realised by HCA of £76 million. Well, the question I would ask to the Cabinet members are concerned, HCA have had this land for a very large number of years and they haven't sold it yet. So what they're saying to us, you take it off our hands at today's prices, you make a profit selling it where we haven't been able to do it. And then the other thing within the agreement says that we're going to finance it all and we're going to deliver 2,800 homes, 8,500 jobs and £300,000 square meal of commercial space. That's what we're committed to. And I can't see that the financial monies coming back can be guaranteed. It's only modelled on what it's going to get, not actually guaranteed. And I just have very grave concerns about this. Perhaps the Cabinet members could get persuade me to support it and persuade the whole community that this will actually not be a financial millstone round our necks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, pleasure. Councillor Reid and Councillor Lowry.
Right, thank you, Speaker. We're not at all completely opposed to such a deal in principle. We do recognise the huge benefit that the right deal and arrangement could bring to the borough. I certainly welcome the comments by Councillor Davis about the input of Councillor Carter. Back in 2011, he was pressing HCA very strongly to release their land holdings. At that time, of course, Milton Keynes were involved as well, and they came out of it extremely well. It was a shame we weren't able to match what they were doing, I suppose, in many ways. However, we note that at the current time, HCA is subject to a fundamental review, which may or may not have an impact on future negotiations. And what Councillor Davis didn't mention, of course, well, unfortunately, and I think he should have done to give a balanced presentation, that it's not all quite as rosy as it would seem. And this sort of deal does contain quite substantial and significant risks. We also note that a number of these risks are there because negotiations have not yet been concluded. And there may be other legal issues and risks which will need to be assessed by council officers and then brought back to this council for consideration before any final agreement is approved. We have further concerns around the council having to fund the cash flow for this project via prudential borrowing, which may add up to 20 million at any one time, when Telford and Wrekin's borrowing, as you know, has already hit record levels. There's a very real and significant risk of not achieving land values after the council has incurred quite significant costs and upfront costs and investments to bring a liability site onto the market in the first place. Indeed, we don't still even know which liability sites will be required to take as a liability land transfer. This hasn't been concluded with HCA yet and won't be done for another 12 months or so. Consequently, I don't think it's possible to properly assess the risk as a council could find itself hugely out of pocket. Further significant risks exist around a future change in government policy. The management costs of 100,000 per annum fall wholly on this council and they're not being shared by HCA at all. However, if this report were here before us for noting and requesting approval to continue with negotiations, then I'm sure we would wholeheartedly support it. As I mentioned earlier, it has the potential to bring huge benefits to the borough, but it has to be the right deal on the right terms. However, we need to see the final deal before any of us here are in a position to fully commit to it. We are currently being asked to approve a major deal which has not been fully negotiated and we simply have not seen. The recommendation should be changed to authorise the continuation of negotiations for a finalised package to be brought back to this council for approval. As part of that process, I would request that an in-depth briefing is made available to members including in particular, of course, my members in the Conservative group. So this complex deal can be fully understood before members are actually asked to vote on it. Now, the report has only just been made available, so for members to go through this, and as I said, what is a very complex deal, and make a decision to support this with all those built-in inherent risks, and a deal that isn't fully negotiated, it just isn't complete yet, I don't believe we have the wherewithal or the information to make that sort of decision.
Thank you. Councillor Lowry, did you indicate?
Yes. Thank you, Speaker. As we know, the land deal could provide a fundamental deal for Telford. With obviously the projected asset valuation of 76 million, this could provide us with a very lucrative opportunity for significant capital generation, which will obviously enable us to obtain that vital investment into our borough. Due to the complexity of the deal, it's essential we know the key facts to truly understand the financial return and consequently to what extent this will enable us to create new homes and employment opportunities for local people. As we know, the land deal is based on the devolution to the local area, compromising of a risk and reward investment, with HCA receiving obviously the 2015 book values for all sites sold before net receipts are shared. We are advised there will be a net uplift on capital receipts of 22.6 million, which would see the borough benefit from expenditure into site preparation and a share of land value uplift delivered over and above the HCA profiled receipts. Whilst I obviously greatly hope these projections can be achieved, the council will be required to make significant capital investment up front, and therefore I feel it's vital we are provided, as has been echoed tonight, with the detail on the commercial and market due diligence of these sites to really more accurately assess the council's potential return into de-risking and preparation of sites to fully understand the return on this investment, and obviously, as been mentioned, the potential financial risks and impact in regards to the transfer of liability sites. I would have too found it more beneficial for all members to be consulted at an earlier stage, and although I obviously appreciate the pressures we are under with regards to timescales, we really must ensure that we have all the information to better understand the complexities, overage of sites to be sold, risks involved, so that we can use this to grow at an achievable rate as a borough. And whilst again echoed to my colleagues, I'm very keen to support an agreement on this deal, I do feel we need further information on how we have exercised due diligence and the assessment of risk to better enable us as members to obviously grant the delegated authority, as it's imperative to ensure we are securing a robust and profitable deal that will benefit our borough for years to come.
Thank you. Any other comments on the report? Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just one or 2 points. First of all, I remember I was at the cabinet meeting when this was discussed by Councillor Harry Carter, and he was sort of really excited about it. I was present in the public gallery, and he was saying, this is what we're going to do. We are talking to the HCA, and we're going to get all this land for Telford, and then we're going to build on it, and then we're going to get all this money. I remember it well. I was sitting in there, and Councillor Harry Carter was really punching the air at that time. Just 1 or 2 other points before Councillor Davies sort of answers it. First of all, I'd like to thank our Assistant Director Catherine Kinniston. She worked hard on it for the last 12 months or 2 years. This is indeed a very complex financial deal with the HCA, the LAP, and everybody else. And she has, worked really hard and brought it forward. And we had our first shadow meeting with everybody involved from the LAP and the local Telford Business Board and the Chief Executive of the HCA as well. And everybody was really positive about it. And just imagine the money that would come from it will stay in Telford. Just imagine that, somebody wants to come in. We got this 400 acres of land, Mr. Speaker. Somebody wants to come in, like Councillor Davies said, and they want to build a big factory in the West Midlands or anywhere. they haven't got it, and they come to Telford and done thousands of jobs and the growth, and of course, you know, we will get the business rates and all the others. Just imagine the potential that this deal could have for us in Telford. And you know, I'm disappointed that they have a reservation, but this is really, really, we worked hard. Just on one final point, Mr. Speaker, on page 11 of the report, there is a termination and exit. Underneath it, it says, HCA land deal will be effective for an anticipated maximum of 10 years. The agreement allows for early termination of the deal by either party in circumstances such as policy change, lack of funding for investment, changes in the market. So it is there. If we want to walk away, we can. Thank you.
Councillor Carter, do you want to exercise your... No? Councillor Davies, do you want to reply?
Just very brief, I think Caldips picked up the main thrust of our response. I think, first of all, the Milton Keynes deal, in fact, involved Milton Keynes Council borrowing a huge amount of money to buy the HCA land just before the financial crisis. So actually, I wouldn't necessarily want to follow the Milton Keynes model now in 2016, with the greatest respect to Milton Keynes. The second point in regards to the commitment of the Homes and Community Agency and the review of that agency, we are told that this has gone to ministerial level. Ministers are happy with this deal, are comfortable taking it forward. I also think that actually the criticisms that some members opposite level at this, although they say they agree with it in principle, actually if you listen to their criticism, you just wouldn't do it because of the criticisms that they've levelled, which I think is a great shame. I think it's also a great shame that Councillor Carter isn't here, because I'd like to hear his views on it, because I'm sure that he would be supportive of this, having spoken to him numerous times before. In regards to Councillor Lowry's point, thanks very much for your constructive comments and makes a change from that side of the chamber. I think that this is a complicated deal, of course, but I'm absolutely committed and sure that the officers that we have got within the council, looking at site by site over a long period of time, it's not a quick win programme of a year or 2 years, it's a decade piece of work. Clearly what we'll be doing is assessing the pieces of land first of all, making sure that those ones that are furthest from the market, those needs are identified, but those that are closer to the market are brought forward for fruition in due course. Councillor Fletcher, in terms of your point of us spending £43 million on the HCA, that isn't the deal. The deal is clearly outlined in the paper, but I'm more than happy to meet with you to discuss it.
Thank you. Did you move the recommendations?
Yes.
Right. And they've been seconded, right, thank you. The recommendation on page 5 of the report, item 2, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4 before you. All those in favour, please show. And 2.5 over the page, I'm told, yes. Any against? Any abstentions? No, the whole lot of them. I think that's carried. All right, get yourself in order. Richard, you said you don't need to make that. Okay. Item 9 is the service and financial planning. It's a separate appendix E. It's only a small one. Now, I intend to do this as one debate because there is an amendment to it, which is the alternative budget put forward by the Conservative group on the blue paper, that is. So one debate. So I'm going to ask Lee Carter to move it. He has up to 20 minutes to do that. I hope it doesn't take that long. And then it's seconded by whoever, Cooley, I believe, seconding. And then, because of the rules of debate, I have to bring in the amendment, which is the blue paper budget, which was moved by Andrew Eade, and then seconded by Adrian Lawrence, which he's got up to 10 minutes to move it, to do it. And then we're open for debate, and I have to give Councillor Tomlinson 10 minutes to comment on it, and when we've gone through all the debate and the right of reply has gone to Councillor Lee Carter to reply to the whole debate, including the amendment, we then take a vote on the amendment on the blue paper first, and then the rest of them. It might come to that matter if the blue paper got through, but I'll handle that as we get to it. So, Councillor Carter, do you want to move?
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to move the recommendations contained in the report, E1, E2, E3, E4, E5. Before getting into the cut and thrust of this debate, I would like to thank the officers, senior management, cabinet colleagues and those Labour members for the support and participation in helping mould this budget. I'd like to thank those members from across the chamber in other parties who offered their input, advice and who helped to try and find solutions, especially those in the majority of towns and parish councils who have engaged brilliantly. Above all else, I would like to thank the public for their participation, details of which I'll talk about later. This administration will never forget that beneath all of this talk of cuts, and despite the ignorance of a government hell-bent on sending local authorities into oblivion, there is a human element to all of this. There are many occasions during the consultation where I was touched by the commitment that so many of our community already make to providing services for each other. There were times where I was angered that what we are being forced to do is beyond our control, and that we are almost helpless in the face of this ideologically driven onslaught from the Conservative government. The human element to all of this was summed up for me in a very humbling way when last week I received 20 or so postcards from the Open Gates Age UK group who were grateful that we have listened and done what we can to try and protect that particular service. They simply said thank you. And as good as that feels, it does nothing to diminish the anger I feel towards a government who are waging a war against local government where the only losers will be the most vulnerable and needy in our community. I won't apologise for repeating the background on which this budget strategy is set. Leading members of the Tory group in this chamber dismiss these facts. In fact, I've even seen some of them laugh at the facts. However, these facts are inescapable. They are things that are beyond our control. They are things that a Conservative group could have chosen to join forces with us on, with the rest of this chamber, and argue against, but chose not to. There are things that our two Conservative MPs could have chosen to speak up on, but both have chosen not to. And the fact that they have chosen not to shows that they choose to play this as an entirely political game. Unlike, for instance, in Shropshire, where the Tory MP and Tory leader of the council have admirably chosen to stand up to their government and argue for a fairer deal for the people that put them there in the first place. And those facts are, number one, the government is taking 53% or £6 billion out of local government between now and the next election. That in Telford equates to 30 million in cuts over the next 2 years, with a further 11.5 million in 18-19 identified already. That's on top of the 18 million cut already. Cumulative savings now total £280 million since 2010. And the government, without notice, have also cut the council tax freeze grant by £700,000 in Telford. It is also established during the comprehensive spending review that Telford is being underfunded by £11 million per annum. In fact, 50 Conservative MPs recently lobbied government to get extra funding because of the funding crisis, and the government released £300 million in transitional funding. The top earners from that transitional funding were Surrey, 11.9 million, Hampshire 9.3 million, Hertfordshire 7.7 million, Telford nil. In fact, 82% of this extra money went to Conservative-controlled local authorities. I'm sorry, members, but when fairness is all you ask, it is an outrage that the Conservative government deliberately make it so elusive. What surprises so many residents that I speak to is that the MP for the Wrekin and the MP for the Telford voted for an 11 million grant for Surrey and voted to confirm a cut of £30 million to Telford and Wrekin Council. And their some contribution to this debate has been to argue for Newport Library and Telford Town Park Visitor Centre. Absolutely zero on anything else. And given the scale of this challenge, it is important that you have a strategy that is coherent and comprehensive. New ways of working are required, new approaches must be sought. There could be no room for old ways of thinking. Nothing can be ruled out. And I believe, members, that our strategy is the only one that will be presented tonight which achieves those things. It is the only one which recognises the need for a mindset change within the authority. A mindset change that actually accepts that we, as a local authority, can no longer be the answer to everything. Our strategy is the only one that encourages a mindset change amongst the public. The public also have to accept that no longer can the local authority be the answer to everything. Our strategy is built on core principles. Firstly, protect the most vulnerable within our community. That is overwhelmingly, through the consultation, what our community demand us to do, and we will do it. Secondly, we must continue to drive growth, be business winning, business supporting, and business retaining, making Telford a place to live and work. We must be ready to capitalise on any opportunities that arise. And folks, you will hear a lot of noise about investment and the plans that this administration has within this strategy. Let's be clear now that all of our capital plans are risk assessed, all are thought through thoroughly, all are monitored and managed. All borrowing is scrutinised and in line with the rules laid down by this council. And all the borrowing seeks to meet one of two objectives. The first, to generate a net profit to support frontline services at as little risk as possible to authority. The second is to encourage as far as possible Telford to continue to grow, to ultimately fulfil the potential identified by Macmillan's government in 1963 when they first designated the new town. The council finances are scrutinised more than any other single item. There is a whole chapter in tonight's papers about the rules around borrowing. And quite frankly, the scaremongering undertaken by the Conservative leader recently has been just that, low-down scaremongering. You cannot lecture us until you get your facts right. Borrowing, as we stand today, is 159 million. And I would like to point out to the opposition that a third of the loans that were taken out and are still outstanding were taken out on your watch, no one else's, and that was within a 4-year period. The third principle is to continue to generate income from other sources. The solar farm, which brings in £180,000 per year profit. New Place, which is bringing income to the council, building an asset for the future, using brownfield council-owned land, providing secure homes for rent, and raising the bar in the private renting sector. We need to have a more commercial outlook to our services, generate more income from selling to others. There is no silver bullet. There's no one-item solution. It will be a combination of these things that will contribute. It is noted that we now sell services to schools in our borough and across the region. Over £2 million is generated in sale of services. The fourth principle, we must continue the efficiency drive, which has seen back office savings higher than those achieved within other authorities who've chosen to outsource. We've had a reduction in pay and the number of senior management. Savings in middle management are amongst the best in the country. I would, however, note the scrutiny comments where there is now genuine concern that we may have reached a tipping point in terms of the staff we've got available to carry out the things that we need them to do. The fifth principle is that we must work in partnership. We must develop and evolve relationships with parish and town councils and the community and voluntary sector, and we have made funding and resource available within this strategy so that the borough can play its full role in this. Now, there are some principles to this partnership working. First, we do not expect that the voluntary sector can pick up everything. This is about embedding a culture of partnership, working where the authority is the first at the table with the best of what it has to offer, but where the authority also works tirelessly to bring others to the table and mould together the best of what the community has to offer. This will not be a one-off event. It will be an evolution of a relationship, and this budget, for the first time ever, enshrines this principle within the working of the council. Finally, and most importantly, values. Compassion, fairness, pragmatism. Values are important, and they are what you should bear in mind when you hear the opposition proposals this evening. All of these things combined will eliminate dependency on the government grant by the end of the Parliament. But think about that for a second. George Osborne, the Conservative Chancellor, is saying that by 2020 not a penny of our income tax will be spent on the provision of local services, including looking after the most vulnerable in our community. Is that fair? Is that compassionate? In terms of the consultation, I would like major thanks to the team that led this year's consultation, which was a huge success. over 4,000 responses, which was twice the number as they enjoyed in Shropshire and Cheshire in their respective consultations. We had over 1,400 face-to-face conversations in every part of the borough, and hopefully this goes some way to demonstrating the respect with which we hold the taxpayers of Telford and Wrekin, and how we want to listen and embrace not just their opinions, but also their ideas and suggestions. This consultation has not just been about talking about the 2-year strategy. It's also been an exhaustive, ongoing discussion with partner organisations about how we can avoid some of the most contentious cuts. I'd like to thank Councillor Davis in particular for the way he's gone about that business. I note with interest that whilst we were doing this, the authors of the opposition budget spoke to exactly 0 members of the public, and instead chose to run to their financial consultants only to ignore the majority of their advice. That says a lot, really, doesn't it? In terms of scrutiny, I'd like to thank Councillor Shirley Reynolds and the scrutiny panel for the way they handled a very complex scrutiny. We've been able to take on board the views of the scrutiny committee, which I will cover later. However, let's get it on record that scrutiny generally supports the proposed direction of travel of this administration. In terms of the proposals, specific proposals contained within the budget, there is 3.2 million extra in budgets for children and adult services. There's £500,000 to support bus subsidies until 2019, and a further 600,000 to support the extra parish environmental teams that are coming online between now and 2019. It is a 2-year strategy which puts 32 of the most impactful savings into year 2 to give ourselves time to find long-term sustainable solutions. This has already paid dividends. Councillor Davis and officers working with our partners have already secured deals for Madeley, Dawley, Hadley and Sturchley libraries. In terms of the recommendations from consultation scrutiny, we've reversed original proposals to increase charges for disabled bay applications. We've reversed winter maintenance reduction proposal. We've reversed the increase to music charges, and we've reversed the proposed reduction in opening hours at the Telford Town Park Visitor Centre. We've also reversed the savings proposed for the reduction in the Creative Arts Service. 2 savings are put on hold and will be removed pending a commercial review. The reduction in the ice rink opening times and changes at ski slope will be removed pending that review. 1 saving is on hold and will be removed also pending a review, and that is the Transport to Age UK day centres, where the aim will be to reduce the cost of running the service, but not to reduce the level of service to users or increase the cost to them. There will be a rephasing of savings in changes to 16+ transport. In terms of Newport Library, the First Point and library service will continue to run, albeit on reduced opening hours. We are passionate about keeping Telford as a good place to live, work and continue to do business. So therefore we have reduced the savings target in environmental maintenance by £100,000. There'll also be a review of the short breaks offer to be covered by contingency if savings not achieved through the personalisation officer. I'll move on to council tax. George Osborne has tried to convince the country that the funding crisis in adult social care can be solved by local town halls and by a 2% council tax increase. It cannot. Given the scale of the overall challenge, but specifically the cost pressures within adult social care, we therefore propose introducing a 2% adult social care levy, which will raise £1.078 million for adult social care. In addition, after listening to the consultation, the majority of respondents were in favour of increasing the council tax over and above that 2%. And we must remember why we have consulted on council tax in the first instance. The council tax freeze grant has been abolished. Our previous council tax pledges have been very firmly based on no change to government policy. This is a significant change in government policy. We therefore have to review that position. And after considering the implications, including the impact on households who are not enjoying the benefits of weak growth in the economy and who still encounter low wage growth, we have decided to opt for the lower of the 2 options put forward, and subject to no significant changes in government policy, we shall implement this each year for the remainder of the CSR period. Our increase is lower than all bar one of the authorities in the West Midlands, including Shropshire, who have increased theirs by 3.99%. I also believe there to be only 5 unitary authorities in the country who have raised their council tax by lower. And the LGA last week confirmed that 9 out of 10 local authorities authorities have also raised their council tax. So, to the Tory front bench, or the authors of the proposals that you're going to put forward, you agree with increasing council tax by 2%, but not by the further 1.2%, despite the majority of folks telling us that that is what they want us to do. You must therefore spell out why you won't do it and how you would make up the difference. In summary, Speaker, this Labour budget is a strategy based on compassion, fairness, honesty and pragmatism. It is a strategy that seeks to rise to the mega challenge presented to us by the government. It is a set of proposals that have been consulted extensively on. We have listened and wherever possible sought to mitigate the impacts on the things that people told us mattered most to them. It is a budget that seeks to put the authority on a course to meet the future challenges that will be presented, but continues to keep Telford open for business as a place to live, work and do business and be proud of. It is a budget which provides the ability for the council to work with others to deliver long-term solutions for communities right across the borough. It is a budget which ignores short-term gimmicks, the raiding of council reserves to dangerous levels, the ideologically driven flogging of the borough's family silverware. It firmly rejects any spiteful progress towards this authority being nothing more than a building that signposts the most vulnerable to someone else who might be able to help. Above all else, it is a budget that understands that beneath all of the figures is a human element, and that we, as a priority, must always be placed to protect services for the most vulnerable. Ultimately, that is why we are all here. Speaker, I move the recommendations contained at E1, 1 to 15, E2, 1 and 2, E3, 1, 2 and 3, the one in E4 and one in E5. Thank you.
Councillor Soter. Councillor Soter, the second.
I understand I only got 3 minutes, so I got to get on with it. First of all, can I saw outside brothers and sisters from GMB. I think they ought to go to talk to 2 MPs as well about these cuts, because they haven't helped at all, like Councillor Carter has said. And thank you. I only got 3 minutes. This Labour administration budget is, as Chief Financial Officer said in these papers, is a sound financial strategy. Sound financial strategy. This budget has its heart the Labour values: compassion, fairness, social justice, and above all, honesty. We always worked hard to deliver these values. We put our children and young people first. We protect and support vulnerable people within our communities. We improve health and the well-being in our communities. We improve local people's prospect through education and skill training. We ensure that neighborhoods are safe and clean. We generate our neighborhoods. We protect and create jobs. We work with towns and parish councils to improve our neighborhoods. All this and a lot more, and no thanks, like Lee Carter said, to this Tory government who has done nothing but cuts, cuts, cuts. No thanks to our 2 MPs who have done absolutely nothing for our residents, a few public statements in the papers, and then nothing after that. Well done to Daniel Kapczynski. At least he got some money, I think £8 million for the Shropshire Council. He threatened his own government that he will not vote for the local government finance bill, and he got £8 million or 9 million for that. Well done to Daniel. What did our MPs do? Absolutely nothing. Just walk through the lobby like the lambs, as if no one will notice them. Local Tory councillors and MPs are in denial of their government's cuts. It's about time they woke up. They are hoping that if they don't talk about it, the cuts will go away. Let me tell you, the councillors over onto the Tory party side, these cuts are affecting people who voted for you. So wake up and face the reality. Look at these. 50 Tory councillors, as it says on there, 50 Tory councillors defy David Cameron's over town hall. This is what's going on. So please think about it. Some of your colleagues out there are thinking about it and defying their own party. Stop playing politics and listen to your consciences. Listen to the cuts. So, Mr. Speaker, in the last 10 seconds, I suppose I ought to say something about this, the so-called alternative budget. And all I can say, it's a shallow, it's bereft of any gravitas. I feel it's an insult to the taxpayers out there. This is a political gimmick to get yourselves in the papers. So selling the family silver and the future will be bright. That's not on. It does not have to be that way. Think about it, councillors. Sorry, did I go over?
You went over, yes.
Sorry.
Are you seconding the motion?
I'm seconding the motion.
Thank you.
The budget.
The budget, yeah. Your proposal, yes. Right, we now have an amendment, and this is Councillor Eade to propose the amendment, which is on the blue paper. Councillor Eade has got 5 minutes to do this. Councillor Lawrence, I understand, is going to second this. He will have up to 12 minutes, taking account of that you're seconding and commenting on the 10 minutes under the standing orders. Okay? Councillor Eade, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Speaker. As you say, I'd like to move an amendment to the administration's budget, and in so doing note that the detail of our alternatives will be presented by my colleague, Councillor Adrian Lawrence. I would first of all like to comment on the budget process and note that it is not commonplace for opposition groups to put forward a detailed alternative budget such as this. Indeed, in all the 4 years that the current administration was in opposition, it never actually did it once. Although after last year's election results, as was mentioned, and certainly the way the voting went, we do look forward to such an event happening in the very near future. I would, however, like to place on record my thanks to finance officers for their considerable time and trouble at what is their busiest and most demanding time of the year. However, I'm particularly concerned by the scrutiny process that has just been mentioned, which seems to have undergone quite a change from the early days of its inception. In certain quarters, it has become adversarial, which does not serve any useful purpose for this council. During presentation of our budget proposals, we were accused twice of lying over debt and borrowing figures, which were in fact signed off as being quite correct by the Chief Financial Officer. This sort of approach does not lend itself to joint working or a proper review or consideration of what is being suggested. An example of this is that 2 years ago we suggested a saving around essential car users allowance, which has now finally been included in the administration's budget. Had our suggestion been taken up when it was first raised, either by the administration or scrutiny, that was 2 years ago, this authority's financial position would now have been £1 million better off. Mr. Speaker, as you say, as has been said, these are difficult financial times, and it should not really matter where saving suggestions or ideas originate from. Party political matters should be pushed to one side. However, although we note the administration's broken promises made before last year's election to freeze council tax and totally disagree with their proposals to raise council tax above that ring fence for social care, I would, if possible, like to note some areas of agreement. And with a great deal of the budget, we do agree. The room for manoeuvre on a lot of it simply isn't there. We do fully support raising council tax by 2% to be ring-fenced for adult social care. We also support the additional 3.2 million funding for adult and children's social care. We believe that is absolutely right, and these are two areas to be treated as a priority. In these difficult times, Mr. Speaker, we have huge concerns about the record levels of debt and borrowing with which this authority has amassed in just under 5 years of Labour control. Borrowing, which stood at 91 million in 2011, prudential borrowing has now reached a record 262 million, with the potential to rise even further. This debt is equivalent to £3,605 for every property in the borough. I've often heard the phrase good debt and bad debt, and I'm surprised that nobody's mentioned it so far. So let me give you my interpretation of this. Good debt is what you owe me. Bad debt is what I owe you. Also, despite producing a plan to build 15,500 new homes in the borough, we see no proposals or even recognition of the need to provide additional secondary schools for which no financial provision has been made. Although we're building primary schools to accommodate a growing population, no money has been collected from developers to provide for new secondary schools. What are we going to see? Future borrowing of up to £15 million per school to add to record levels of debt? I look forward to receiving an answer, as a tidal wave of secondary pupils will hit us around 2020. Speaker, some of the administration's original savings proposals made me shudder and were, in my view, totally unnecessary. I'm glad that they've listened and accepted our arguments on some of these, and made U-turns where necessary. In fact, some proposals, such as library closures, particularly at Madeley and Newport, were so shambolic that I wonder if any member input into these proposals have been made at all. To start a review of library services with the words, "The purpose of this review is to close the following libraries," beggars belief and gives the impression of the administration's budget process, and part of it is in a shambles. As I said, I welcome the U-turn on this and the other 18 or so original proposals, which perhaps demonstrates, which perhaps demonstrates just how far out of touch this administration is with its own community, rather than claiming it to be as a response to consultation. Those figures were reflected, of course, in the local elections. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, firstly, of course, I'd also like to thank officers for all the time and effort they put into the creation of our rival budget proposals. And also, I'll pick up on some of Lee's points. I mean, some of the things you say, Lee, I can actually quite agree with. It's right that we should listen to residents, and the purpose of and the way you've gone about having a consultation, you know, that's a right sort of approach. And of course, we should all campaign for better funding for the council. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, we all, that's our job. We should try and get the best for the council. But the reality is, the previous Labour government left this country in a right mess. Tax and spend almost bankrupted us. £150 billion deficit was run up. And through all the efforts of our...
By the banks.
Yeah, the banks will come to that. We'll come to that.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. They're not allowing our speaker to speak. They're interrupting. Could you not control them, please?
Okay, the deficit is... We're now halfway. We've got the deficit down to 75 billion. There's another 75 billion to go. And of course, it's not going to be easy. And local authorities are going to carry part of that burden. And it's not easy. It's not good. But that is the reality. And you created that reality just as much as it's all right to complain about it, but that's part of the reason we're in the mess we are. Yeah. We can talk a little bit about the banks. The Bank of England produced a really interesting report on the financial crisis just before Christmas, which I had a good copy of, and I had a good read of it. And I know over the years, Labour politicians here...
Councillor Lawrence, can you listen to Councillor Lawrence in the same way that we listen to Councillor Lee Carter, please? I tolerate so much, but you're going beyond the bounds now. Sorry, Councillor Lawrence.
Yep, thank you. And Labour politicians locally and nationally have put a lot of the blame on the banks. And, you know, I was sceptical of that. I always thought, you know, it's a government, it can't be the bank's fault. But when you read that Bank of England report, it's really, really interesting reading. Because what it says is the boards of those banks, NRAM and RBS and all the others, were put forward what they believed were really attractive and interesting investment proposals, nearly all in property of some form or other, commercial property. And they all voted through thinking that the right approach was to borrow money cheaply and invest in these really good assets. But what actually happened was those assets turned out to be disastrous. And these aren't small organisations, these are professional banks, large national organisations, property companies, people who know all about, you'd think they would know all about property. But just take RBS as an example. They lost over 50 billion in the period between 2008 and now. And that is mostly property related. And one of our worries in the budget proposals in the alternate budget is that exact same approach is now being followed by the administration here. Borrowing money cheaply, okay, from the Public Loan Works Board, it's different from the commercial markets, but it's the same idea, and investing in speculative investments. You flagged that, you know, the debt levels, of course some debt level is acceptable, and up until now we've had, in my opinion, manageable debts, but the problem is your proposals are geared towards borrowing large amounts of money, speculative investment, and using that income as you believe will be there to support the council budget. But the problem with it, and the worry that's driven our budget proposals, is that the interest has to be paid. You know, the government won't accept us defaulting on those loans, that's got to be paid, but the income's not guaranteed. And the danger to it is that the revenue budget will be put in a very difficult situation. We've already paid around 8% of our budget in the form of interest when base rates are 0.5%, and you're borrowing, planning to increase debt from 130 million as it is now to 262 million just in the proposals that you've already approved through Cabinet. So if any of those proposals, any of those projects go wrong, we'll be stuck with the debt to pay, and we won't have the income levels you expect. That's exactly what happened in the financial crisis, and exactly why the country ended up in the situation we are now. So that's the reason we are looking to de-gear the council. We're concerned that the proposals you're put forward, though you believe them to be low risk and you know, a good idea, we're not so sure it is. We think the right approach is to reduce the level of debt that, in our opinion, is already getting too high, and our proposals are to dispose of New Place, the solar farm, and some of the PIP expansion that you've proposed. And in doing so, we can reduce the risks that the council faces. There's a lot of other risks that we face at the moment. For example, we're all a lot of us are members of the employees are of the council's final salary scheme. And what's happening nationally is that people are living longer, which is great, but the returns that are invested in the stock market are not there. So that's an income challenge for the future. Those contributions are going to go up, that's right, but that's got to be paid for out of our budget. There's a move nationally to local funding, which we all support, but then we're more vulnerable to the local council tax base than the businesses in our area. We feel whatever happens tonight, the council needs to look better at stress testing to consider more thoroughly what happens if things go wrong. There's also a whole series of other proposals we put forward. We support you in the precept, the 2% for adult social care, but we want to make the point that, you know, prior to the election, in this time, you know, last year, you promised the electorate 2 years of 0% council tax. That was a pledge that you went to the election on, and you promised and led residents to believe there'd be a 0% council tax this year. But through your, as I said, your perhaps not completely straightforward consultation, where you found it difficult. It's quite, residents have said to me in my area that it's not been easy to choose what they would really like, which is a 0% council tax. They've actually found it quite difficult to find that option. So I don't accept that consultation is quite as genuine as you would like us all to believe. Also, when we asked officers about alternatives, we said to officers, can you show us the alternative savings we could look at? You know, what other savings have you asked for? And we were told that the administration had asked that exercise, it said that exercise didn't need to continue any further. They'd found the savings that had been asked for, and there were no more savings being considered because no more work had been done. So you do have to ask yourself, you know, why is that? We all know that the more savings are going to be needed, and why hasn't more work been done on that process? And the only answer you can conclude from that is because you'd already decided that you wanted a council tax increase.
and therefore you didn't need those savings. We supported the freeze, but we don't agree with your proposals to increase council tax. And you said it publicly now, subject to no change in government policy, you plan to increase annually for the next 4 years. So your 0% council tax increase has turned into a 13.4% council tax rise when you annualise that change over the next 4 years. You know, that's not what residents want. The national and world economy is in a difficult situation. There's every indication that the economy nationally and locally could deteriorate. People are struggling, and every pound you take in council tax is a pound out of the pocket of residents, which could be spent locally. Within our proposals, the budget does balance. Officers have given a statement to say that our budget proposals would work. So we could have a 0% increase other than the 2% precept, and it would balance, and that would work. Yes, we've agreed to take some money out of balances, but the changes that have happened between the end of the year and now have actually added 1.3 million to them. If you put all the differences into account, it's about 546,000 in differences. One thing in our budget proposals which is different from yours is a living wage. You talk very much about the local economy, but your proposals do nothing to recognise the national policy that we brought forward of a living wage, and we brought that forward earlier than need be. So there's nothing like that mentioned for yourselves. You've challenged us on how, if we sold these assets off, how we would generate income, and what we feel is there's a lot of good opportunities to generate centres of excellence within the council, where our good services, we can sell those services to other authorities and other public sector bodies around the country. And we think that approach is a far better approach locally, creating local jobs, making the best out of our excellent skill sets we have. That is far better than speculative investment. If we had come as administration and said we want to borrow money speculatively and invest it in fine wines or you'd have ripped us to pieces, saying, what on earth are you doing investing in speculative things like that? But you are actually investing in speculative commercial property, and the houses for people are buy-to-lets that should just as easily be operated by the private sector. There's another series of small proposals within our budget. Rights of way, it's an area being long neglected, and of course highways. There wasn't the opportunity this time of doing a proper exercise. We give a commitment to reduce the level of debt, but we'd also give a commitment to find ways to fund improvements into the highways. That would have been a very time-consuming process for officers. So that's a commitment, but we would need a lot more time and resources to get that done correctly. A couple of other things, of course, education. We put in place 75k extra for an urgent school place review, as my colleague Andrew said. There's a real potential crisis growing, and we don't think you're addressing that. And one perhaps quite funny thing is I'd like to thank Councillor Davis for some of the suggestions he made a few meetings ago about how we should get our budget together, because you were actually quite right in what you said. Selling the properties and all those things you suggested, they're in the budget. Shorn of the debt, as I call it. Okay, I think I've just about covered everything, everybody. Thanks for letting us have the opportunity.
Councillor Tomlinson, under the standing order you have 10 minutes, but do you want to wait for a few minutes and let the debate go, or do you want to reply now? Okay, fine, thank you. You have got up to 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Up to 10 minutes.
Thank you. Well, firstly, I'd like to commend the Conservative group on my right here for putting an alternative budget together. It's not easy, and he is right, the previous administration had never managed to do that. So I commend them for that, but after that it's a bit disappointing. I would also like to commend, as others have done, the Conservative MP for Shrewsbury for really going hard along with his 50 other colleagues, to try and get to overturn the government cuts and managed to get 300 million, I believe, for various local authorities, including Shropshire. But our two MPs were absent from that. I am hopeful that in the next year or two, when more Tory councils realise, A, they can't blame themselves because they're Tories, B, they can't blame their own government, oh crap, they're Tories, they'll be thinking, who else can we blame? We can't, so we're going to have to petition the government to try and change policy. And I'm really hoping, that in years to come, that when the scale of these cuts and how it's going to affect people is really seen by the public, and it's not the councils that are trying to make these cuts, it's the cuts imposed by the government, I believe and I sincerely hope there will be U-turns in the future from this government to scale back. I only can live in hopes. With regard to the alternative budget, I do commend Adrian Lawrence for putting it forward. He talks about risk and he talks about borrowing, and I can't help feeling I was here 7 or 8 years ago when the Conservative administration were quite genuinely borrowing money to reinvest and regenerate parts of this town, and as laudable as that was, I warned them then that there could be a possibility of financial crisis posing. I was told that I was scaremongering, and lo and behold, one came, the tsunami that followed it, which took away all this local authority money. They were championing borrowing then for laudable causes. Is this one any different, what this administration is trying to do? First of all, the government, the Conservative government, have taken the shackles off local authorities to allow them to engage more in commercial enterprises. Why have they done that? They have done that because local authorities haven't got the money themselves because they've been cut. The government have acknowledged forward-thinking councils need to move in that direction. And that's the way Telford and Wrekin are going. Is it a risk? There's always a risk. He mentions that banks shouldn't have lent so ridiculously to all these dodgy assets that they bought. Councillor Lawrence is absolutely correct. But that doesn't mean to say that a bank and a financial institution should not lend at all. That's what they're in business for. And in the future, to a small degree, it's what local authorities will be in business for. What have we invested so far that people were moaning about? The solar farm. Well, generating electricity for green purposes is a dodgy issue, isn't it? Well, it's not. And it's also now generating this year 180k. New places, it's only just ticking in. We are able to take advantage of cheap finance from the government. We are already generating 270,000 in the financial year that's due to end. So those two projects alone are contributing £450,000. What have the Conservatives said that they will do with all of these? They will scrap them. That income is lost. What have they said that they're going to do? In their alternative budget, they do address the issue. They say they'll find further savings. So of all this pain and angst that we're already going through, in future years, where increasingly that income will increase, they're saying they will take it out. Maybe 450,000 sounds like what it costs to run the libraries. Maybe in a few years' time they'll shut the libraries. Who knows? They're not going to find the money from anywhere else, are they? The one part of their budget that I completely agree with, however, and it also ties in with what Councillor Carter said is the most primary importance this local authority has, is looking after the most vulnerable. We all like to be popular as politicians, and sometimes doing the unpopular. It's what we're actually voted for, but we don't like doing. Councillor Lawrence and the Conservatives tonight have gone on repeatedly about the Pride Fund. Now the Pride Fund, because, and I won't get technical, because that £1 million is coming out of revenue money, that revenue money is going to be in short supply in 2 years' time. When I look at page 61, this local authority have been very imaginative and with the auditor's view have managed to change the way that we impair and depreciate our assets. To that effect, we have got an additional £6 million that's been dropped into next year's funding. That's staved off and given us time to look at how we can make further cuts and generate other income. And as they also reiterated, it allows us to make the 3.2 million additional investments into looking after children and adult social services. And those two really require that money because it's hard to not put that money in. However, look at 2017 and 18. We haven't got the extra 6 million anymore. In fact, we've got a small deficit of 188,000. We're now having to make savings in adult and children's social services. Now, this isn't the authority trying to just do this willy-nilly. It has to do this. It hasn't got a choice. There's nothing else anywhere to cut. So there I put onto the table for you for 2016 and 2017. Pride money are all extremely laudable causes, similar to the capital regeneration that the Conservatives did through their administration, which, as Councillor Carter said, generated over 1/3 of our current borrowing. If you place the 120,000 that went to Newport, you place the money that's gone to Ironbridge, and you say, are they laudable? Yes, they are, and I'd love them. But then you say to yourself, what happens if we have a problem in 2017-18? Would we carry the Pride money on for $1 million and knock another $1 million off adult social services, or children's safeguarding, or the libraries, or anywhere else? My opinion, and I know I'm unpopular, is no. I can't on one hand go to Shawbirch and say, here you are, which I know they haven't, here you are, there's 300,000 to do something up, which is a really laudable cause, and it can be part of regeneration. Only on the one hand to say, those 15 elderly people that live in that ward now cannot have that service. You don't see those 15 elderly people, but we do, and we're paid to do that. So, in a nutshell, what I would open the door to the Labour group is previously they funded some of this Pride money through capital. Now, it may be if regeneration is required and you budget up as regeneration, I could look to that. But to take £1 million each year of its precious money that we're looking at, particularly for 2017-18, I can't countenance that. Council tax increases. We had through the Telford Journal the other day a wonderful newspaper from the Tories wrap around telling us about the ignominy. How can this council do double taxation? Double taxation is when you once had a service and you find out you have to pay the tax to have it again. Well, they are right. They are right. But who's generated this? Osborne himself is telling us to raise the council tax by 2% because he's taken that money away, which was previously coming from our other taxes that we all pay. That is double taxation. He has started it. What else has he done quietly? He's taken off any need for town and parish councils to have any cap at all on their precepts. Why? He knows that borough councils like us are going to be so desperate, we're going to those town and parish councils to try and find other ways of getting money because we don't have to have a referendum. It sounds awful, but it's true. He knows that. He knows we're going down those other devices and all those every which way we can but loose to get that money. I wholeheartedly support the efforts that this Labour administration have made in putting this budget together. I reluctantly, but for those vulnerable people that would desperately need this money, I support the 3.2% council tax increase. We'll still be one of the lowest in the West Midlands. Shropshire, Tory council, neighbours to us, have got the extra £8 million they wanted, and they've already agreed to increase their council tax by 3.9% for the remaining 3 years. It's not just us, it's everyone. And I can't help remember being at a cabinet meeting once where a lady from Shropshire Radio was looking at the same facts, and she said, do you know what? It's nothing to do with these councils, really, is it? They can't help with what they're doing. And I just wish more people, it would dawn on them. All we're having to try to do is actually see where we can cut the most equitable. We haven't got a choice. I really am hopeful that the government will change its stance. Councillor Lawrence is absolutely right. We are still borrowing $75 billion a year. We can't allow that for our children. But this isn't the area to cut it from. Thank you.
So for debate, I've already got 3 speakers. Councillor Clements.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I thought last year's opposition budget was bad enough, but I have to say this isn't any better. It's got no vision. It's backward thinking and lacking in any real acknowledgement of the pressures on local government and a long-term strategy to survive. So just picking up on some of the points that they've raised. And again, they've been negative on growth. They spent the last 5 years attacking our growth agenda, yet their alternative budget makes the same assumptions as this administration on our generation of capital receipts, growth in income from business rates, the new homes bonus and additional council tax from new developments across the borough. A proposal to reduce the number of homes to be built by the borough by 3,000 would have a future financial impact of a reduction of around 6 million per annum. That's a lot of money. Again, their budget mentions adult services, but doesn't suggest any different approaches to service delivery. And the reality is that the 2% precept ring-fenced by government is just a drop in the ocean, not just for Telford and Wrekin, but for every council across the country. Again, they talk about sharing our senior officer and treasury team. Why on earth would you share our treasury skills that give us an edge on other councils? I agree in the technical areas, if we have the capacity, then we can sell our services, but not share or partner. I want our senior management team and finance team to work with us, Telford and Wrekin members, to fight for Telford people, Telford jobs, and our precious Telford hospital. Sharing our team would be a complete disaster. The opposition budget says the council should focus on marketing our core activities, which it knows well. Well, can I inform the opposition that we are already doing that? And can I remind them that it is their government that has imposed the most horrendous and unprecedented cuts on local government in modern history? We have to think of new ways to raise income. All councils are doing that. Your government are telling us to do that. Now, I was in Birmingham last week and I had an interesting and yes, friendly conversation with a cabinet member from Shropshire Council, who said that they were all the cabinet there, were really impressed with some of the progressive ideas that were coming forward from Telford and Wrekin on income generation, and were looking to do the same. And we all know what went wrong there with IP&E. That's in the paper tonight. So Tory councils and Tory MPs across the country are angry with their own government. Yet what I find appalling is that there is absolutely no mention whatsoever in the opposition budget paper acknowledging our fair funding campaign, trying to get back the 11 million we have been shortchanged. Not a word, not a sentence. I've looked. That members show an absolute failure to support or recognise the unfair deal that we have been dealt with by this uncaring government. They really do need to get a grip. This is a sticking plaster opposition budget, devoid of progressive ideas for the future and devoid of a long-term strategy to survive, and I cannot support it. That's it.
Well, Councillor Sloan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll of course be supporting tonight's budget and opposing the amendment, but I particularly want to highlight the increase in the council tax and what that additional 1.2% will enable this council to do. As the report makes clear, the children's safeguarding budget will be put on a sustainable basis by an additional ongoing funding of £1.62 million. Speaker, 65 years ago next week, I was born to a woman who, for whatever reason, was unable to care for me. Thanks to what we would now call an intervention, I was placed for adoption into a loving and caring family. Yes, I was lucky, but it's not just about luck. 3 years earlier, the Attlee government had enacted the Children's Act of 1948. This made it clear for the first time that local authorities had a duty to care for any child whose parents could not care for them, and established local authority children's department to view children as human beings with individual needs for the first time in this country. So just 3 years after the most brutal war in this country's history, we as a country could find the determination to protect our vulnerable children and launch the NHS. But in 2016, this Tory government follows a blind pursuance of cuts. They continue to protect defence spending, but not spending to protect vulnerable children. They cut education services and the NHS because, frankly, Chairman, they don't use them. They have no shame, and I will proudly vote for a budget that ensures the safeguarding vulnerable children and vulnerable adults is this council's top priority.
Councillor Gilly Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's so frustrating to listen to the narrative of the opposition. It is short-sighted, a sticking plaster at best, but a dangerous deepening of future costs at worst. Even if you do buy the Conservative rhetoric that we're all in this together and everyone must carry their burden, in the words of Councillor Lawrence, I do not accept the rhetoric from Telford's MP and the Tory group opposite that the residents of Telford and Wrekin must carry a bigger burden than residents of Surrey, for example. It is unfair that Telford and Wrekin residents suffer more government grant cuts while facing higher social need than other areas of the country. I don't think anyone in this room can say we are impressed with the behaviour of Telford's new MP, but I'm appalled that she would deny the £11 million which this council has shortchanged every year. As elected representatives, we must fight for our borough, fight for our residents, and always put them first. I'm confident that this administration's budget, and I thank Lee for all his work he's done on this, albeit difficult, is compassionate and fair, unlike the hand we are dealt by the Conservative government.
Councillor Tim Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday this week, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation published a report, this report, called Uneven Growth, Tackling City Decline. It made national news. Members may have seen it. The report ranks the 74 largest towns and cities in Britain in order of their relative decline, the worst first. Telford features, which is unfortunate, in the worst 24. I do not propose to analyse the findings here, though I am happy to discuss them with the administration. The point being, even I will grant that many of the factors, such as the proportion of graduate employees, or the ratio of part-time to full-time employment, even level of government grant, are outside the administration's direct and immediate control. So, Mr. Speaker, let us focus on something that has been under the administration's direct control, the utter shambles that has been their own budgetary process. A shambles culminating in something that my colleague, Councillor Eade, referred to. If you're going in the wrong direction, you've got two choices. You can use Councillor Carter's own words, which is you can go into reverse, or you can do a U-turn, which is what you've done. The biggest U-turn, I think, in recent political memory locally. We are going to the library, close the libraries. No, we're not. We're going to stop helping old people to their cherished and looked after visit to an Age UK centre. Sorry, we got that wrong. What a shambles. A kitchen sink approach to the savings. Let's just chuck in everything we can think of. No strategy, despite what Councillor Carter is saying, evident in the consultation process. No underpinning vision other than the ritual protecting the most vulnerable. Proposals to save £5,000 a year on music services, mixed up with closing day centres, saving millions. Now, Mr. Speaker, I hope this, in a way, I hope this mess is the outcome of incompetence. I suspect we all fear it is. The reason I hope it's just rank poor administration is that the alternative is unpalatable, that actually this mess was all part of a plan to spread maximum alarm and despondency. The human element, Councillor Carter, that you yourself raised, the human element, okay, genuinely worrying some good and simple residents, and to boast about receiving thank yous for not closing something that you were going to close yourself is cynical. Part of a plan to spread alarm and despondency about closing services, but with no intention of actually seeing it through. As we've seen, it's been the fastest U-turn in the West. Actually, the libraries can stay open after all. The transport to Age UK care centres can be provided if, of course, wait for it, we pay more tax. Then my point is, why not say so in the first place? Like I say, I hope this charade was just a pathetic accident, because if it was planned, then it was cynical, it was manipulative. To use Culdip's own word, it was not honest, it was playing with people's lives, and the administration should know better. In fact, I believe some of my colleagues opposite do know better. They should be ashamed. 2 out of 10 must try harder or let someone else try. Mr. Speaker, it did not have to be this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shirley Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've had the opportunity to look at both budgets in quite great detail during the budget process. I'm quite heartened to hear that this cross-party approval has been shown for the increase in the adult care budget and the 2% increase for council tax for the adult care precept. But it must be made very, very clear that this 2% increase to support the budget does not cover the cost that is needed for adult care. The process has been very difficult this year. The administration has had to make cuts from frontline services because of the savage reduction in government funding. And whilst nobody wants to see these libraries close, I think the fact that these have been brought forward this year has enabled partners to work with us to protect these services. That has been invaluable. I'd like to congratulate everyone involved in the consultation. That's what you're missing over there. It was consultation. This administration has listened to the consultation, and because of that, some changes have been made to the budget because we have listened to what people want. We've already had to make cuts of over 70 million. The administration's worked hard to protect the public. We've reduced the office space. We've reduced the staffing. We've cut back office costs. 45% of that, we've saved over 8.5 million. We've halved senior management. Not quite sure how many extra people you think we've got to keep selling these services to other people. We have done everything we can whilst trying to generate extra income and growth. Brings me to an important point which has been mentioned already tonight. Some of our colleagues do seem to be fixated on borrowing. They don't know the difference between good and bad borrowing. Our investment strategy is paying off. The solar farm alone has brought in over £185,000 a year protecting adult care packages. Remember what this money is being used for. Whilst I do welcome the production of your alternative budget, I have to say I personally was disappointed with the content. Yet again, the opposition are trying to score political points. It wasn't really any alternative. It was no evidence-based facts. It was not a sustainable budget. It had no substance, no imagination, and it certainly didn't deliver any growth at all for our town. Our residents need a business-winning council, and your budget certainly doesn't provide that. Selling off assets that bring in income for our town is not the way to go. What will happen next year and the year after? We've got another £30 million cuts to come. You can only sell your family silver once. There is absolutely no logic in selling off the assets that are generating income for our town. I am proud we're investing to save in jobs and create income. Our budget is not short-term and it's not short-sighted like the alternative budget. I call across members across the floor to lobby the MPs, both our MPs, to get fairer funding for Telford. Why our local MP did not fight to get more money for Telford, but Surrey did, I don't know. I am proud of this administration. I am proud of our budget. I support the business-winning agenda. I am proud that the administration has worked with local towns and parishes to have a chance for us to deliver services differently and protect services. I'm proud I belong to a compassionate party who wants to protect the most vulnerable in society. We will fight for fairer funding. I'm committed to serving the community who elects us. This budget I endorse. It cares for the people of Telford. Fully endorse it.
Councillor Overton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, Mr. Speaker, this is one of the most difficult budgets this administration has had to consult on and put forward. This administration is fully committed to delivering services despite this government's clear attack on local councils. It comes to something when the Prime Minister's own family are signing petitions or joining protest marches. As you know, this administration has detailed the most controversial cuts, those relating to markets, libraries and community centres, into the second year to enable us to have time to consult and engage with parish and town councils on the third sector on a different model of delivery of these services and the control that enables them to be sustainable for the long term. I am proud to say that Councillor Sean Davis and officers, through their discussions, have managed to protect most of these services, and negotiations are continuing. The role of scrutiny have also been welcomed in this process, and some of their concerns have been addressed through both good financial management and the fact that our residents see these blatant attacks on local government and support a rise above the 2% social care precept. Mr. Speaker, Councillor Lee Carter and the administration did not enter politics to make decisions that reduce services to our residents. It is always difficult with reducing budgets to try and deliver for the most vulnerable, but our fairness and compassionate approach has made sure that what is before you tonight delivers on that agenda, and our full cooperative council way of working. A council that listens, engages and acts. A council that supports, motivates and creates sustainable services. The Chancellor says councils should be innovative and create income. Our solar farm and housing programme through New Place is just that innovative approach. But the Tories opposite want to sell off those assets and commercial opportunities. Green energy cast away. The income stream wiped out. The housing that develops brownfield sites which their government wants to see utilised stopped. The hope of secure tenancies to our residents ripped up and another income stream curtailed. This administration's budget is clear. It is about maintaining services for the future. It's not about the short-term approach identified in the Tory budget. We are not wanting to put forward recommendations that answer some of the problems for some of the time. This isn't about putting forward a budget that supports services for tomorrow's headlines, but one to create services for tomorrow's generation.
Councillor Nigel Dugmore.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're all acutely aware of the current financial situation, and we all know the reasons we are in such a state, namely the legacy of the Blair and Brown era. We are told this administration proposes a budget which is fair, compassionate, and the question remains, fair to whom? It's not fair to the council taxpayers who are being asked to pay an extra 3.2% council tax. This is 40% more than our budget proposes. It's not fair to householders who are seeing parish and town council precepts increasing to pay for services that this administration wants to palm off to local town and parish councils. Mr. Speaker, there's no clearer example of double taxation. We already pay Telford and Wrekin to provide a library service. Now we're being asked to pay for the same service by town and parish councils. How is that not double taxation? The proposed Labour budget will result in council borrowing continuing to spiral out of control to £262 million, and the record debt of £3,605 per household increasing further. Projects like New Place and the solar farm will generate some income, but it's only a fraction of that's what's needed. And we need to bear in mind that it costs millions of pounds of borrowed money to set these projects up. By contrast, our budget, incidentally signed off by finance officers as being robust, introduces the living wage, something that I would have thought you would have supported. Libraries and community centres would not be under threat, and borrowing would be brought under control by focusing on providing services, not dabbling in areas that this council has little expertise. Yet it would be nice to carry out these eye-catching vanity projects, but we need to concentrate on what money is available on maintaining services to our residents. It's a scandal that in these constrained times this council bought a pub for £300,000, got rid of the land, then gave the parish council £100,000 of it to buy it back off us using our own money. This whole deal has cost the council in the region of £200,000, but they can't see it. Money we can't afford. It's just slipping through our fingers. How many care packages would that provide? We are told that the budget consultation exercise was a huge success, yet only about 2.5% of the population responded. However, it was sufficient to provide a response in several areas. Mr. Speaker, until this administration starts to focus its efforts and money on providing services to the residents, it will continue to increase debt and borrowing. Their budget says so. I can't support the Labour budget and urge members to support our alternative budget, which will reduce the financial burden upon this council and the residents. It cannot be right that this Labour administration puts buildings before people. I'm still waiting for a response from the Cabinet member. And finally, Mr. Speaker, with regards to local MPs, members opposite never miss an opportunity to criticise our MPs. Perhaps they should adopt their own cooperative working and try working with them, not against them.
Councillor Andy Burford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well,
just a couple of quick points. I'm not going to take the full 3 minutes. But first of all, I just found it absolutely breathtaking to hear the bankers pouring money into get-rich-quick hedge funds equated with local investment, risk-assessed local investment in housing and jobs. That knocked me back. It took me 2 or 3 minutes to get over that one. The second point I'd like to make is about consultation and the cynicism which I'm hearing from the other side about its importance. The cynicism about involving local communities in the very painful decisions, the decisions that we on this side don't want to make. It is very sad to hear that kind of contribution from the other side. We were very open on this side about what we were doing from the outset. It's not for nothing that we put more of the cuts into the second year so we could find time to find the alternatives that we've come up with. That was obvious, and we made it clear from the start. There are no U-turns here. We're listening. I don't think the other side understand what listening is and what talking and taking account of people's views is all about. Blue is in the name. We have to actually take communities with us. It's a small c and a small p, as well as a big C and a big P, because we have to make sure that people realise that we're on their side and responding to those local needs. That's why that small budget, and it is small in compared to most of the council's spending, is so important to us and has been important to us. It's building that sense of involvement in these difficult times. I support this budget. It's the best we can do. It's an investment for the future, which the other side do not seem to understand how important that is going to be come 4 or 5 years' time. Please support this budget. Thank you.
Peter Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As an independent, pause for sniggering, which is unnecessary. It's interesting to listen to both sides here. I think most people outside of the two parties are quite frankly sick and tired of hearing whose dad's bigger than the other one. This kind of argument goes on and on and on, but it doesn't solve anything. I'm very pleased that both budgets don't force me to close libraries. That I'm very, very pleased about. So I cannot be accused by anyone for voting for any budget that closes libraries. The important thing, I think, is that if you take away the politics, you have to look at which budget is the most sustainable over the future. In terms of... There must be an echo in this room. In terms of the alternative budget, I'm fundamentally against selling any assets that bring in income. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. And in the terms of libraries, I know you pledged to keep open Newport Library, and yet I cannot see anything in there that will actually show me exactly how you would keep that open in the future. The good thing about the Labour budget is I can see a sustained opening for that library in the future. So on balance, and it's nothing to do with politics, it's about sustainable futures. There is only one budget here tonight for me, I'm afraid. I know you would like me to say I will vote for yours. I cannot. I have to follow with the administration's budget, because it makes the most sense. And I think people, when you take the politics out of it, you will see that the sustainability of the administration's budget just makes common sense. Thank you.
Right. I've got 3 more speakers down, and then I'm going to close the debate. We'll have had 17 speakers, which is nearly a third of the council, so it's not been a bad sort of debate. Steve Bentley. You do. Well, you've got to think of the audience, haven't you? The public. I know you're not on a show, but they need to know what you're saying.
Right, I'm not going to really speak to the budget. I'm just going to talk on 2 points.
You've got 3 minutes.
Yeah. One is the underfunding that was referred to recently. That has been something that historically this council has faced from day one. And neither a Conservative nor a Labour government has ever addressed that. So whining about it now, it's a waste of time. It's never going to be addressed. And MPs across the board have never actually fought to get it a proper deal for Telford and Wrekin. Secondly, consultation, as I understand it on the budget, is a statutory requirement. Maybe if you want open consultation, you let the people make the choice between the alternative budget and the administration budget at the same time. Therefore, you'd have a real outcome, wouldn't you?
Thank you, Councillor Bentley. Councillor Davies, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I will vote for a long-term budget with a long-term plan. When the Conservative group are in a panic, what they do is spend millions of pounds of
I've never been accused of panicking.
millions of pounds of one-offs. When they're in the last year of being in control of this council, just before the election, they spent over £9 million worth of one-offs. This budget today that they put in front of the council assumes £3.9 million of one-offs. So that's £3.9 million more cuts either next year or the year after that they're not being honest about now. £3.9 million black hole, actually, Mr. Speaker, which has been added to today because they hadn't got their figures right around parish environmental teams. When this alternative budget was published, and if there was no changes, Mr. Speaker, then 10 apprentices would have been laid off as a result of their alternative budget. So where will this £3.9 million worth of money from the Conservative black hole be funding from? I guess, Mr. Speaker, it's cuts in services. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the solar farm and New Place, £500,000 surplus, that's after all the costs of those two projects are paid for. Where is the £500,000 additional cuts that you will impose upon residents of Telford and Wrekin each and every year going to come from? Mr. Speaker, that's £4.4 million black hole in the centre of the Conservative budget. Mr. Speaker, we know, because the Chancellor has told us, that the council tax grant will go by 2019-2020. So where's the plan to deal with that? Are they pro-business? They must be the most anti-Conservative party group in the country, Mr. Speaker, voting against every single measure that we put forward to attract inward investment, to bring companies to Telford, to grow in Telford and sustain Telford. The other part, Mr. Speaker, of income from this council is through commercial services and commercial income. Where is their plan to drive up commercial income? There is no plan, Mr. Speaker. The reality is, if this alternative budget is passed, there's £4.4 million Tory black hole that will grow year on year, Mr. Speaker, because they're not in a position to put forward a strategy for the future. It's a sticking plaster for a hemorrhage of a budget. And Mr. Speaker, may I just say, in closing, during the Conservatives' 4 years, they had record year-on-year investment from the government by way of council tax grant. It went up year on year. And, Mr. Speaker, so did their council tax. The Conservative administration put council tax up more in their 4 years than this administration has done in the last 5. Mr. Speaker, the reality is there is one serious plan for the future of this borough. That's the Labour plan. We'll talk up our town. We'll support our town. We will not be negative. Vote for the Labour budget. Reject the short-term alternative budget.
Councillor Liz Clare, and then Councillor Carter to reply to the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think every time we have a council meeting, we tend to have a history lesson. Well, here's mine. Thatcher got in power, first thing she did, that 7.5% to 15%. Where's the fairness in that? Let's sell the council houses. Yeah, and who's paying for it now? I suggest you watch Panorama on Monday. The millionaires that have been created out of council houses being sold, the people that bought them, couldn't sustain the mortgages, become homeless, and the burden goes back onto local authority for whatever their circumstances. I'm responsible for libraries, and the thing is, what we want for libraries is a sustainable long term. Where's the best place for the people to decide whether they would like in their community a library? It needs to be right at the heart of the community. The second thing is that we've got to look at is the actual small community centres. How those to be sustained, not for 1 year, not for 5 years, but for 10 years. If those are the services you want in your particular community. As for consultation, the first thing you'd have done is stood up and said, you've read the consultation papers and you've put them in the bin, you've done nothing. U-turns, they're not U-turns, they're listening. If you don't listen, then why spend the money going out? Quite rightly, it is a government initiative. And you say about a referendum about which budget to accept? Why wasn't your alternative budget on the table, ready? Nobody stopped any of the Conservative councillors coming to those consultations and said, hang on chaps, here's our budget, what do you think of ours? Now I'm sorry, you did nothing. And you're doing nothing now by presenting something that size to something that size that gives you the detail of what is going to happen. I rest my case.
Councillor Carter to reply to the debate. I'll tell you when 9 minutes are gone.
Speaker, thank you. I think we're all probably budget weary now, but I will take some time to respond to the debate. I think he's quite right in terms of what the leader of the Conservatives and Councillor Lawrence has said, that both our proposals agree on many of the proposed savings. We both agree with putting 2% on the adult social care precept. However, I wish you'd have been a little bit more clear in saying so to the general public rather than doing so in this room this evening. You weren't particularly clear in your work of fiction that was a Telford Journal wraparound. And let's think about that wraparound for a second. I mean, it was meant to demonstrate your capability with numbers. And we can see that that was sadly lacking. For instance, you actually couldn't count how many councillors you've got. 22, but declare you've got 23 on your wraparound. Perhaps you spend some time at a future council meeting coming clean about that particular one. We also agree that single status should be resolved, and we'll commit to doing so by 2017. But in the meantime, we won't raid the pot of £1 million, even though the auditor finds that a highly risky move. We agree that alongside this, the council should be a living wage employer. But let's be honest about the living wage. It's not £8.10. It's not Osborne's phony £7.20. It's £8.25. And we will actually work to exploring ways to implementing that £8.25 alongside resolving the single status issue. But that's about where the agreement ends, which is sad given that there was a clear demand from our community to work together to overcome the cuts placed upon us by this government. The opposition proposals, a bit like that journal wraparound, are a work of fantasy and fiction, short on detail and full of holes, which is surprising given the so-called superior acumen, financial acumen that they claim to have. No details on how they will cover the ongoing lost revenue from the council tax freeze grant. No clue other than to say that they will sell children's services nationally, selling children's services down the end of a phone to boroughs of London to help make up a £30 million gap. I mean, you even propose to scrap the income proposal around free school meals in your budget. That proposal within the targets means that the more free school meals that are taken up, the more the council benefits, yet you have scrapped it. You propose scrapping the Growth Fund and the Destination Telford Fund, both of which play a huge part in bringing business and people to Telford. You plan to sell off New Place, the solar farm, and reverse the growth package, and that is frankly retrograde. It will cause an immediate £1.7 million hole in the budget. And exactly how would selling off those investments, like the solar farm and the housing, and not building new industrial units, help Telford and Wrekin generate income? Your comments in your budget papers about solar farm around the feed-in tariffs are ridiculous. You in effect suggest that your government will break a legal contract that is signed with this council. The bottom line is you've got no rational or reasonable argument against that solar farm other than, and this was, you may laugh, but this was actually said by one of your councillors, the sun doesn't shine that much in Telford. And here's the best one of all from the financially capable councillors opposite. Which one of you will own up to wanting to sell the solar farm for less than it costs to build it? Because that is exactly what is contained within your budget proposals. On the growth package, which one company has already taken up and many more are interested in, as we've heard from Councillor Davis tonight, that package is aimed at making a profit. It gets business rates for the authority. And the company in particular have already taken it up. We're about to leave Telford. We want more and we need more of those. Are you seriously saying that you would not have built that unit for that company? Because that is what your policy and your proposal tonight means. The existing property portfolio is worth just under 50 million, but generates net income of 5 million. The council could actually do with more of these. The comments in your proposal about commercial property. You're actually in effect saying that George Osborne's November views on the UK economy are not true. You're actually saying that there is a huge downturn coming. The new commercial property investments will be to order. They will suit agreements reached with businesses, not speculative property building. On New Place, again, you are totally wrong. The private sector never took up any of these sites, including when you ran the council. Selling and stopping that scheme now is unlikely to be possible. Are you seriously saying you would not build property for the ongoing rental income? The facts are, basically, your proposals are clueless. You're clueless when it comes to growth for this town, you're clueless when it comes to growing jobs, and what's worse, you're clueless when it comes to your own government's policies. On house building in general, what many won't have realised, whilst you've been going around the town talking about reducing the number of houses that we plan to build, is that that will cause a £6 million black hole in our finances going forward. You fail to tell people that. And sorry, Speaker, they seem to have a plan. You plan to use 3.4 million of one-offs, but you've got no plan for savings equivalent to that, and that leaves the council extremely vulnerable. You seem to want to every problem, suggest that you'll use one-offs. Only today, you've realised that you've made no provision for pets or bus subsidies. And what's the solution? You want to use another £500,000, £500,000 of one-offs. And what's the plan once that's gone? Nothing, absolutely nothing. In total, you plan to use 60% or £3.9 million of our one-offs. Now, this is not new behaviour for you, granted. Let's for a second hark back to previous attempts at budget setting. Who remembers 2008, the Cabinet paper, where you anticipated only having to make £9 million of cumulative savings by 2012, and you would bridge that gap by raising council tax by an average of 3.76% per year? Who remembers 2011, where you raided reserves to the tune of £9 million? And then within the budget, which is appalling, is this mock concern for our staff who've worked diligently and so hard through these troubled times. You criticise redundancies. Are you saying you wouldn't make 1,270 jobs reduced? If not, how would you have funded it? Surely by selling the solar farm, building no new industrial units, and stopping the residential property investment and management, you would in fact have to make extra redundancies. And the biggest hypocrisy underlying this is that within your proposals you still plan to raid staff terms again. So don't be fooled by the rhetoric. The alternative is a budget driven by ideology. And to back this up, one of them even boasts that they came into local politics to reduce the council debt. Nothing about delivering for local people, nothing about protecting services, just to reduce council debt. So, Mr. Speaker, we've heard much talk and debate this evening. It is sad that the Tory leadership continue to blame a Labour government from 6 years ago, and this administration for all the world's ills. They must be the only local politicians in the country who fail to see that the problem lies with the Tory government. And in terms of our partnership working, you shouldn't have to look too far. Actually, I greatly admire your member for Park, who runs the Adneston Community Centre. That is a real community facility run on exactly the kind of principles we are looking to achieve right across the borough. There was a real opportunity here to present a united front to work together in the interests of people. I again applaud those who have embraced that concept. Instead, it is only our proposals that seek to do that. Progressive, pragmatic. We are actually currently acknowledged, despite what the opposition may say or what they may have you believe, we're acknowledged as being at the cutting edge as an authority, innovative in making savings and increasing income, and this administration will never shy away from that. Our proposals are supported by scrutiny. Yours aren't. Let's make that quite clear. They find it confusing and they think they are commercially naive. There is only one plan that has listened. You can call that a U-turn if you want to, but actually I take great pride from the fact that we've listened to over 4,000 people who responded to our consultation and the 1,400 people that I met personally face to face. So there's only one budget this evening that will equip this authority for the future. There is only one that promises to do its best to deliver for our communities. And there's a little quote about overcoming challenges that I want to leave you with. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Mr. Speaker, I urge every member in this chamber to keep this authority moving forward and support our Labour budget. Thank you.
Right, Vice Chair Flowers. Right, we now come to the important part of voting on the budget proposals. First, we've got to vote on the amendment, that's the blue paper, whether to accept that or reject it. It's up to you. All those in favour of the amended amendment, please show. The final vote one has to be recorded. Okay. So those against those against it. I think that's pretty clear that it's lost. It's gone down. Okay. Right. We take the other votes now, because we have to vote on the final one as a recorded vote. E1, E2, E3 and E4, do we need to do them separately or can we do them en bloc? All those in favour of E1 to E4, please show. No. Start again. I thought it was in favour of en bloc. People were. I heard shouts of yes, agreeing. Okay. So all those in favour of E1, E2, E3, and E4, please show. All those against. Right. Any abstentions? That is, they are passed then. 28, 21 and 3 abstentions. We now come to the final one, E, which is the council tax form resolution. Now this has to be by law a recorded vote. So I'll ask the vote officers to shout out.
So this is recommendation E5. Councillor Ashford. For or against? Against. That's against. Councillor Barnes. Against. Councillor Bentley. Against. Councillor Blundell. Abstain. Councillor Boylan. Against. Councillor Burford. For. Councillor Burrell.
Against.
Against. Councillor Lee Carter. For. Councillor Clare. For. Councillor Cook. For. Councillor Sean Davis. For. Councillor Dugmore.
Against.
Against. Councillor Eade. Against. Councillor A. England. For. Councillor N. England. For. Councillor Evans. For. Councillor I. Fletcher.
Against.
Against. Councillor V. Fletcher.
Against.
Against. Councillor Francis. Against. Councillor Furnival. Against. Councillor Guy. For. Councillor Hoskin.
Against.
Against. Councillor Jones. For. Councillor Kiernan. Against. Councillor Lawrence. Against. Councillor Loveridge. For. Councillor Lowry.
Against.
Against. Councillor Mason. For. Councillor McClements. For. Councillor Meredith. Against. Councillor Minor. For. Councillor Mollett.
Against.
Against. Councillor Murray. For. Councillor Nelson.
Against.
Against. Councillor Overton. For. Councillor Pinter. For. Councillor G. Reynolds. For. Councillor S.A.W. Reynolds. For. Councillor S.J. Reynolds. For. Councillor Rhodes. For. Councillor Sahota. For. Councillor Scott. For. Councillor Seymour.
Against.
Against. Councillor Sloan. For. Councillor C. Smith. For. Councillor M. Smith. For. Councillor Tillotson.
Against.
Against. Councillor K. Tomlinson. Abstain. Councillor W. Tomlinson.
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Turley. For. Councillor Watling. For. Councillor Wright.
Against.
Against. 21 against, 24 abstains. It is carried.
Carried. 28-24, and that's and 3 abstentions. Okay, we now come to item 10, which is minutes of boards and committees for noting. The following noted, agreed. Audit Committee. Finance and Enterprise, Licensing and Personnel. Okay. Item 11 is questions. None have been submitted. Just a few days, Andrew. Just a few days over yet. I'll save it for the next time. Item 12 is notice of motion. None have been submitted. Therefore, I close the meeting. Thank you all for attending.